Tears streamed down Yuto's face as he stabbed a fallen monster, trembling inside the blood-stained cavern. More creatures rushed from the shadows, overwhelming the summoned students and breaking their formation. Blonde warriors advanced boldly, cutting down enemies while bodies scattered across the battlefield. Yuto stared as one classmate eliminated countless monsters with terrifying skill. A massive impact shattered the ground, hurling students aside as a cold observer judged their weakness. A glowing fairy appeared before the gathered students, signaling the beginning of their trial inside the cavern. Yuto struggled against a goblin, forcing himself to fight, despite fear and inexperience. Breathing heavily, he noticed the tunnel stretching deeper while classmates battled nearby. Stronger students boasted about their abilities and chose to advance, leaving weaker ones behind. Yuto called out as the group hurried forward, realizing the formation was collapsing again. After constant battles, a girl suggested resting to recover strength for the next fights. The group agreed, and Manhwa announced a short break, easing the tense atmosphere inside the cavern. Yuto sat against the wall, breathing heavily while others gathered nearby to recover. Watching the stronger students, he reflected on being summoned into this unfamiliar world. Memories of his ordinary high school life surfaced, reminding him how suddenly everything had changed. Yuto sat in class, distracted by thoughts of a new game, while the lesson continued normally. Suddenly, pillars of light engulfed the room, trapping him and his classmates in blinding radiance. They reappeared inside a massive stone arena, filled with robed figures watching from above. A crowned king proclaimed the summoning a success and greeted them as heroes. Shock spread among the students as they realized they had been taken to another world. Students panicked around the crowned king, but a blonde classmate stepped forward and restored order. Under his guidance, they listened as officials explained the Empire's crisis and the reason for their summoning. They learned about different races and the dangers threatening this unfamiliar world. A status window appeared before Yuto, revealing his level and the skill called absorption. Soon after, everyone confirmed receiving abilities, while a distant impact signaled the harsh reality awaiting them. Inside the arena, Miyamoto displayed overwhelming swordsmanship, earning praise as the crowd watched in awe. Status screens revealed powerful abilities among the class, confirming their exceptional talents in this world. Apart from them, Yuto examined his absorption skill and realized its severe limitations. Shadows of doubt surrounded him as classmates silently judged his apparent weakness. Clenching his fist, Yuto resolved to prove himself, despite the gap between his power and theirs. Tension erupted as accusations flew, and a reckless strike threatened to provoke every monster nearby. A blonde leader intervened, ordering everyone to prepare while dragging the argument to a halt. Shrieking goblins swarmed from the darkness, their numbers multiplying as chaos spread through the cavern. Blades flashed across the front line, cutting down the charging creatures in swift arcs. With fierce determination, the leader rallied the heroes forward, driving them to confront the advancing horde together. While stronger heroes cut through enemies, Yuto struggled to keep pace in the chaotic battle. Standing alone at the rear, he admitted he lacked their talent but forced himself forward. A goblin leapt from above, driving him to raise his blade in desperate defense. The impact pushed him back as another creature rushed from the side. Cornered and shaken, Yuto steadied his grip, realizing survival depended on his own resolve. A goblin seized Yuto by the collar, lifting him as he gasped helplessly. Suddenly, a girl rushed in and struck the creature aside, freeing him from its grip. Shaken and humiliated, Yuto admitted his weakness while the battle raged beyond the tunnel. A dark, horned monster emerged from the shadows, locking its gaze onto him. As Manhwa tried to heal a fallen classmate, Yuto realized the true threat had only begun. The horned monster lunged toward Manhwa, and Yuto moved on impulse, stepping between them despite his fear. Energy gathered in his hand as he realized he could not attack, only draw the creature's strike away. The monster shifted course and charged directly at him, ignoring Manhwa completely. Frozen in place, Yuto faced the incoming blow without understanding his choice. Darkness filled his vision as doubt consumed him, questioning why he risked his life. Yuto lay motionless on the cavern floor, unable to move as his strength faded. Manhwa examined his wounds and realized a curse was preventing any healing from working. Leaders concluded he could not recover and decided the group must abandon him. Despite hesitation, the stronger students accepted the decision and prepared to move on. Manhwa protested desperately, but the others advanced, leaving Yuto behind in the darkness. As Yuto lay helpless, several classmates mocked his weakness and blamed him for the disaster. Manhwa knelt beside him, apologizing while desperately attempting to heal the curse. Tears filled her eyes when she realized her power could not restore his condition. A blonde leader pulled her away, insisting they abandon Yuto and continue forward. Left behind, Yuto watched as he was condemned as a burden, his life fading in silence. Harsh words surrounded Yuto as he lay helpless, accused of being worthless and harming Manase's resolve. While others warned about the spreading curse, Miyamoto dismissed him and suggested he die quietly. Cold numbness crept through Yuto's body, stealing his breath and voice. Pinned against the cavern floor, he stared at their distant faces and realized no one would save him. As plans continued without him, Yuto felt his existence fading from the group. Onizuka restrained Yuto and coldly suggested using him as bait to gain experience. Dragging him across the cavern floor, he ignored the distant protests from others. Fear paralyzed Yuto as he realized he was about to be murdered for their benefit. A mysterious presence urged him to use his power if he wished to survive. Desperate and trembling, Yuto considered embracing that unknown strength to defeat his tormentor. A violent shockwave burst outward, interrupting Onizuka as Manase stared in confusion. The group turned toward Yuto, sensing an unfamiliar presence rising from his fallen body. Onizuka lunged again, furious and determined to finish him before anything changed. Instead of collapsing, Yuto stood upright as dark energy surged around him, his movements no longer sluggish. With trembling eyes slowly steadying, Yuto awakened to a power that silenced the cavern. Yuto seized Onizuka's strike midair, stopping the attack as the watching students froze in disbelief. Energy coursed through his arm, and he understood that absorption had activated. Strength flooded his body after taking the power known as the God of Ogres. Enraged, Onizuka accused him of hiding his ability and charged recklessly. Refusing to die, Yuto countered the assault, determined to survive with his newly claimed power. Empowered by stolen strength, Yuto overwhelmed Onizuka with a brutal counterattack that shattered the cavern wall. Dust settled as the remaining students stared at him from a distance, stunned by the sudden reversal. Miyamoto praised his power, recognizing it as worthy of a true hero. Yuto calmly confronted him, reminding the group how they abandoned him to die. Without another word, he turned his back and began walking away from them. Miyamoto called out, attempting to stop Yuto, while Manase watched anxiously from behind. Without answering, Yuto faced the dark tunnel ahead, choosing silence over confrontation. The group stood frozen as he walked alone toward the cavern's depths. Concern spread among the leaders, who feared his growing strength could become a threat. Determination hardened Miyamoto's expression, preparing himself for the day they would meet Yuto again. Yuto walked alone through the freezing tunnel, unsure how long he had been moving forward. He suddenly discovered a chamber filled with massive ogre corpses scattered across the ground. A monstrous presence stirred nearby, drawing his attention deeper inside. Before a sealed door, his status changed, revealing a new ability called God of Ogres. Yuto faces a massive sealed door as a dark presence urges him toward what lies beyond. A shadowed arm grips the handle, compelled by an unseen force to open the entrance. Beyond it spreads a vast canyon and distant dungeon, stirring memories of betrayal. Elsewhere, summoned heroes approach the forbidden territory cautiously. Knights confirm the dungeon's extreme danger as unease spreads. Akane stands before the group, smiling lightly while claiming Yuto no longer matters to their mission. Several classmates justify abandoning him, insisting he lacked authority and contributed little to their survival. The armored knight reacts with frustration, blaming Yuto for acting independently and ignoring clear warnings. Akane calmly states that everyone is free to choose their own path. Shock spreads across the knight's face as her words reveal a colder resolve. Unease spreads among the gathered heroes as the armored knight steps forward to confront the distant figure. Suddenly, an attack strikes the ground before him, forcing him back as debris scatters across the canyon floor. Kneeling in frustration, he questions his own weakness while rage hardens his resolve. Behind him, classmates whisper that Yuto may have surpassed expectations. From afar, a girl watches the dungeon entrance, sensing Yuto's presence near the dark opening. Akane smiles faintly, suggesting it would be troublesome if Yuto were somehow still alive. Inside the dungeon, Yuto crawls forward while the massive doors shut behind him without warning. A vast hall stretches ahead, lined with pillars and darkness, leaving him disoriented and alone. Cold air and a foul stench surround him as fear tightens his body. A distant presence urges him deeper across the narrow bridge toward the shadowed interior. Yuto lowers his head as a distant voice calls his name, stirring hesitation within him. Admitting he has nowhere left to return, he forces himself to walk deeper into the silent chamber. At the hall's center, a sealed figure addresses him as an outsider who has finally arrived. The mysterious girl greets him calmly, claiming their meeting was inevitable. Shock overtakes Yuto when she reveals awareness of his origin from another world. The mysterious girl thanks Yuto for saving her long ago and apologizes for his betrayal by former comrades. Overwhelmed, he insists he did little, yet she calls him outsider and acknowledges his immense ability. Within the dim chamber, she invites him to stand beside her. Confusion fills Yuto as he struggles to understand her proposal. With steady eyes, she declares revenge against the Empire and seeks his strength. A vision of the Saint Empire Valencia appears, the nation that summoned Yuto and now governs his fate. Facing the girl, he declares the Empire must be destroyed, despite the danger involved. She studies him closely, questioning whether he truly holds hatred toward that kingdom. Memories of humiliation and rejection surface, exposing the pain he endured after betrayal. Lowering his head, Yuto admits denying his anger would be a lie. Accepting their shared cause, Yuto introduces himself nervously, while the girl presents herself as Melia, observing him from her throne. She repeats his name with interest as he stands uncertain before the long chamber. Seated calmly, Melia remains composed, reinforcing the authority surrounding her presence. Without hesitation, she reveals that she is a demon. Shock spreads across Yuto's face as she declares herself the Demon King's daughter and ruler of this land. Melia explains that this land once served as the true capital of demons for centuries. Under the moonlight stood Lunaria, a thriving city created by her father as a sanctuary. Different demon races lived there peacefully, supporting one another without conflict. In a single night, that paradise was destroyed, leaving only grief behind. Amid chaos and collapsing walls, the Demon King faced overwhelming danger as his people cried out. Melia recounts how the Empire invaded their paradise, crushing the capital and slaughtering countless demons. Survivors were enslaved and brutality spread beyond the city without restraint. Later, Valencia rewrote the truth, branding demons as savage creatures to justify conquest. She insists demons rarely harmed humans, yet humanity exploited their kindness. Bound in that chamber, Melia reveals her sealed power and imprisonment since the Empire's betrayal. Melia declares her wish to rebuild Lunaria and gather scattered demons so they may live peacefully again. Yuto initially doubts her words, yet she calmly accepts his hesitation without anger. Stepping forward, he admits she once saved his life in this place. Resolute, Yuto chooses to trust her over the empire that abandoned him to die. With firm determination, he offers his strength to help fulfill her wish. Yuto accepts Melia as his guide, admitting he has nowhere else to belong. Turning serious, he asks about their first step toward opposing the Empire. Together they outline the need for power, allies, and a growing resistance. Melia reveals a sealed curse binding her strength, requiring a rare dispelling ability. Realization dawns as Yuto understands his absorption skill may be the key. Melia tells Yuto she wants him to grow stronger, warning that he cannot yet control his ability. Sudden tension rises as Yuto instinctively braces himself inside the chamber. Creatures within the dungeon awaken, their presence shaking the hall. Calmly observing the chaos, Melia sees opportunity in the unfolding danger. Extending her hand, she urges Yuto to use his absorption and take her power. Yuto hesitates, fearing the cost of taking Melia's power, but she assures him the loss would only be temporary. Testing his ability, he realizes absorbed powers remain within him and confirms absorption as his true skill. Suddenly, monsters surge through the chamber, shaking the dungeon with violent force. Alarmed, Yuto turns toward Melia as the creatures close in. Bound yet composed, she instructs him to place his hand upon her chest to begin. As monsters close in, Yuto is urged to absorb as much power as possible without hesitation. Overcoming embarrassment, he places his hand against Melia and activates his ability. Dark energy erupts violently around him, surging outward from his body. The force spirals like a storm within the chamber, overwhelming everything nearby. Outside, soldiers and creatures alike witness the terrifying surge spreading from the dungeon. The raging energy subsides, and Yuto calls out to Melia as the chamber grows still. Freed from the seal, Melia thanks him, explaining the curse vanished once her power returned. Turning toward him, she confirms his absorption succeeded and releases her from centuries of restraint. Dark magic surges wildly through Yuto's body, forcing him to struggle to control it. A status manifests before him, revealing new abilities born from Melia's power. Yuto struggles to control the newly gained power, as Melia assures him it can repel the approaching monsters. Holding her close, he steadies himself while creatures gather across the broken bridge. Surrounded at the dungeon entrance, he positions himself between Melia and the advancing beasts. With resolve replacing fear, Yuto prepares to confront the charging monsters head-on. Melia appears before Yuto as monsters attack. Explosions tear through the ground. Beasts close in while a voice urges him to claim power. Resolve replaces hesitation inside him. Shadows respond to his will. Black funeral forms, as he strengthens his body to fight back. absorbed energy surges through his arm. He slams Black Funeral down and crushes the monster completely. Silence spreads across the battlefield. Exhausted but standing, Yuto faces Melia, realizing his power has awakened. Yuto reviews his rising level and absorbed abilities. He studies Gale, Flash, Thunderbolt, and Hard Claw. Each technique reveals destructive power capable of reshaping the battlefield. Realization settles in that these skills rival Fierce God. Confidence builds as he measures himself against others. Melia reminds him of their greater objective. Yuto accepts that their path leads toward destroying a nation. Despite satisfaction, he understands his growth is insufficient. Yuto questions Melia's request as she calmly asks for clothing. Confusion shows on his face while she waits without concern. A dark portal forms beside them. Yuto flinches at the sudden appearance, yet Melia remains composed. Melia changes into black attire from the portal. Yuto watches in surprise as she adjusts calmly. She chooses their direction and heads toward the exit. No monsters remain in the area. While moving forward, Melia explains the dungeon's multiple routes. Yuto and Melia advance through the tunnel when debris crashes ahead. A crystal-covered monster emerges near a dark opening. Yuto prepares himself as it charges forward. Wind gathers in his palm and Gale erupts outward. The force collides with the creature's armored body. Electricity follows as he leaps upward. Thunderbolt strikes down, aiming to break its defense and claim new power. The impact shatters crystal limbs across the ground. Fragments scatter while the monster collapses before them. A distant blast strikes Yuto and throws him back. He realizes the monster can attack from long range. Twisting midair, he releases Gale before another strike lands. Wind propels him toward the creature. He closes the gap and activates absorption. Power transfers as he presses forward. Strength surges through him, and he launches a counterattack. Cracks spread across the crystal armor. The monster staggers, but remains standing. Yuto prepares for the next exchange. They enter a tunnel leading toward the great forest of Dingerith, beyond the Empire's borders. Melia speaks of the forest where demons once hunted and reveals the king has been slain. Yuto listens in silence. She declares their intent to take revenge on the Empire. Determination replaces sorrow within her. Memories surface of his summoning and near death. Resentment begins to consume him. Abandoned by comrades and the Empire, Yuto recalls his fear, and the moment his heart hardened, Yuto pushes himself forward against multiple monsters, knowing hesitation means death. His abilities multiply as absorption expands his arsenal. Confidence grows while he acknowledges the burden of countless powers. Exhaustion finally overwhelms him after repeated battles. His body falters, and he collapses before Melia, drained from relentless strain. Yuto recalls his ordinary school days and the weakness he once justified. He believed staying uninvolved would change nothing. Memories of hypocrisy and harsh reality weigh on him. He suddenly awakens inside the dungeon. Melia appears beside him, pulling him back to the present. A protective barrier surrounds them, formed by Black Funeral. Sitting within the barrier, he admits his exhaustion. Melia explains the limits of his magic, and he quietly reflects on his state. Yuto is startled by the idea of functioning without sleep if his magic supply remains stable. Melia clarifies that magic conversion continuously restores energy, allowing his body to stay active. He considers the depth of absorption and accepts it demands proper mastery. Further ahead, they find the bridge missing, replaced by a vast gap. At the edge, both assess the darkness below and recognize the danger of crossing. Without warning, Melia grabs Yuto and pulls him close as he reacts in confusion near the broken edge. She leaps across the gap while holding him tightly. After touching down, Yuto struggles to steady himself. Melia remains composed, despite the risky jump. He collapses briefly, then notices a field covered in scattered skeletons and weapons. Standing among piles of bones, they realize countless humans perished here, leaving the cavern filled with remains. Yuto surveys the scattered weapons and dried bloodstains. Footprints and damage suggest a battle that occurred long after the war ended. A towering armored figure appears before them. Its design clearly marks allegiance to the Empire. Melia studies the remains and estimates the scene is over a century old. Examining a skull, she notes unusual damage and aged blood. Realization spreads between them. Suspicion rises as the truth behind the massacre begins to surface. A massive dragon crashes into the cavern, revealing they have stepped into its nest. Yuto freezes as it blocks their path. Melia warns that skull dragons are far stronger than earlier foes. The creature roars, shaking the ground. Yuto steadies himself despite the pressure. Confidence struggles against rising fear. The dragon lunges across the broken terrain. Doubt flashes through his mind. Facing the towering beast, he realizes this is a true monster and prepares to fight. Memories of fear and helplessness resurface as Yuto recalls his inability to protect Manase in the past. Determination replaces regret, and he resolves to change the outcome through strength gained in this world. Facing the dragon, he unleashes multiple abilities at once, striking with force and driving the monster back. Suddenly, a shadow pierces his body from behind. Shock spreads across his face as the lethal blow lands. A corpse dragon dives from above, crushing stone as Yuto stands frozen beneath it, blood dripping from his injured arm while fear clouds his thoughts. The impact explodes across the cavern floor nearby. A pale girl watches in silence. Suddenly she strikes, sending the massive creature crashing aside, while Yuto is flung violently through the air. Pain spreads through his body as the dragon rises again, jaws widening toward him, trembling and terrified. Yuto struggles upright, refusing to fall. A violent explosion erupts within the cavern, blasting rock apart as darkness swirls around the descending corpse dragon. Yuto clutches his bleeding chest and forces unstable power outward, black energy wrapping around him despite the toll on his body. Desperate attacks scatter across the battlefield, yet the dragon endures while his strength rapidly declines. Retreating along the cliffside, he searches for a decisive strike, realizing only a fatal wound will end it. The battered dragon lands again, injured but advancing, as Yuto prepares himself for one final attempt. The skull dragon crashes across the cavern, its shattered body restoring itself as fragments pull back together with unnatural force. From a distance, the pale girl observes while Yuto struggles below, facing a creature said to be truly immortal. He thrusts his hand forward, unleashing concentrated power that strikes the dragon's head and forces it back. The monster's body collapses briefly, breaking apart against the ground. Seizing the moment, Yuto reshapes his energy into an explosive attack and drives it forward, aiming to destroy it completely. Yuto lunges toward the dragon, determined to seize its immortality and end the battle by stealing the source of its power. Dark energy surges as he activates absorption, tearing magic from the creature while enduring the strain on his body. Newly gained force lifts him into the air, keeping distance from the regenerating monster below. Concentrating intensely, he compresses the stolen power into a dense sphere within his palm. With precise timing, Yuto releases the erupting flame, driving the destructive blast straight toward the dragon. Yuto fires repeated blasts across the cavern, striking the dragon again and again as explosions swallow its massive body. Refusing to stop, he pours out every remaining fragment of strength until the creature finally collapses into silence. After the dust settles, he stands unsteady while the pale girl watches, acknowledging that the dragon's power now belongs to him. A strange force spreads through his body as the stolen immortality takes root within him. Moments later, his wounds vanish completely, leaving Yuto staring in stunned realization. The skull dragon's immortality is revealed to be a forbidden power sustained by magic, marking it as a dangerous taboo beyond ordinary control. After absorbing it, Yuto reviews the many abilities now within him. Understanding that such overwhelming strength demands caution, guided by the pale girl, he learns that greater trials await in the vast Dingerth forest ahead. With resolve, Yuto moves forward beside her, determined to test his new immortality in the depths beyond. Within the Valencia Empire, the summoned heroes are observed closely, their rapid growth drawing attention from the Empire's leaders. During training, one young warrior releases a precise explosive spell, demonstrating refined control over destructive magic. The blast strikes its target and erupts across the field, forcing others to acknowledge the strength displayed. Nearby companions react with surprise and admiration, recognizing his exceptional talent soon after. Even a high-ranking commander praises his magical skill and swordsmanship. During Imperial training, the summoned heroes steadily improve, proudly crediting the Empire while displaying newly developed skills before their peers. Elsewhere, a confident warrior demonstrates overwhelming physical strength, drawing attention from nearby knights observing the session. His strike shatters solid stone armor, proving the rapid growth granted to the chosen group. Another trainee is hurled aside, yet rises again, determined to endure the harsh methods meant to sharpen them. Despite the progress, tension lingers among certain members. Mockery spreads among the trainees as one boasts he could easily defeat Nakatani, drawing uneasy reactions from those nearby. The tension escalates when Onizuka violently grabs a companion, anger rising over the insult. Others confront him, questioning his hostility, while the situation threatens to spiral further. Before blows can continue, a composed knight steps between them and firmly halts the conflict. Leaning close, he warns Onizuka to direct his rage toward a true enemy instead of his fellow heroes. After the clash, Miyamoto is thanked by relieved trainees while Onizuka storms away, brushing past others in frustration. Across the field, several heroes admire Miyamoto's strength, impressed that he defeated Onizuka so decisively. Nearby, a witch playfully startles a worried girl, briefly easing the tense atmosphere among the group. Away from the crowd, concerns surface about Nakatani's suffering, despite everyone trying their best determined to support him. The girl promises to heal Nakatani whenever needed, while he quietly values her friendship. While some heroes struggle with doubt, others remain composed as imperial officials approach with formal authority. Chancellor Dennis arrives with high-ranking figures, greeting the commander and observing the summoned heroes closely. He reminds them of the summoning decree and requests their presence under royal order, drawing the group's full attention. Inside the grand hall, the king addresses the assembled heroes, recalling the reason they were brought to this world. A new command is issued, ordering them to exterminate the remaining demons on the front lines without delay. The chancellor describes demons as man-eating demi, humans, portraying them as mankind's enemies who threaten innocent lives. Although some question the morality of killing beings that appear half-human, the royal decree pressures them to comply. Miyamoto steps forward and accepts the order, prompting the others to follow his decisive example. Encouraged by his resolve, the heroes convince themselves that acting now will aid the struggling empire. With the target revealed as an abandoned castle, the campaign against the demon remnants officially begins. Yuto learns of Argonum, a former demon city hidden deep within the Dingerth forest, once prosperous before its fall. As they walk through a long tunnel, he considers the possibility that survivors of the demons may still remain there. Without warning, Melia presents him with new clothing, rewarding his efforts and acknowledging his progress. After changing, Yuto feels restored dignity, no longer dressed in torn fabric from past battles. Grateful, he accepts her guidance, prepared to move forward and help fulfill the lingering wish of demonkind. Beyond the vast Dingerth forest, Yuto stands with Melia overlooking a distant city hidden among mountains, recognizing it as their destination. Soon after, he identifies the ruins as Argonum, while allies gather behind him, preparing to advance toward the demon stronghold. A vast forest stretches beneath distant mountains as Yuto recalls his childhood question about an old castle beyond the trees. He remembers his father explaining that demons who abandoned Lunaria settled there, now older. Yuto walks through a narrow path with Melia. Melia quietly studies his face while he keeps his gaze forward, determined to reach their destination. Standing close among the trees, both hold hope that familiar figures still remain within the ruined fortress. Yuto tells Melia the demon city lies 3 days away, recalling that without his skill he once could not have endured such a journey. As they advance through the forest, an attacker suddenly charges. Inside a wooden hall, armed men surround them, mocking Yuto's appearance, and preparing to kill him without hesitation. The scene shifts toward a grand building where distant memories of children and laughter contrast with the looming structure ahead. At night, a figure named Ryan approaches a closed door. Ryan returns with supplies, greeting the hidden demons as children rush toward her and elders observe quietly from the hall. She prepares food at once, handing out bowls while the younger ones gather around her with visible gratitude. When someone offers thanks, Ryan dismisses any debt, reminding them that dragons and demons have long stood as allies. Following the royal capital's fall, survivors escaped here. Remembering her childhood care, Ryan remains convinced demons are not cruel and chooses to protect them. A young demon promises that someday he will grow strong enough to protect Ryan, declaring his wish with innocent determination. She gently encourages his dream while other children gather around, trusting the bond between dragons and demons without doubt. Later, Ryan carries dinner to Mr. Wright, expecting an ordinary evening inside the quiet refuge. Instead, she discovers his lifeless body on the floor, as armed figures surround the courtyard below. The doors open wide, revealing a warrior before a line of soldiers, coldly confirming the demon's identity. Imperial soldiers storm the hall, declaring every demon must be exterminated to protect the Empire from future threats. Before Ryan can react, blades cut down the children behind her, and blood stains the floor as chaos erupts. Panic spreads through the castle while desperate voices urge everyone to flee from the advancing Imperial forces. Inside, the soldiers count the bodies with cold amusement, competing over how many lives they will take. Ryan kneels beside a fallen child as laughter echoes above, the massacre continuing without mercy. It looks like a very tense battle. Even he himself is not recognized as a demon. Ryan confronts the soldiers, demanding to know why innocent lives were taken as she charges toward them in fury. An Imperial warrior blocks her path and strikes her down, declaring that demons were never considered worthy of mercy. Elsewhere, more children are cornered while a soldier raises her weapon, dismissing their youth as meaningless. Before the blow can finish them, Ryan forces herself forward again. During the chaos, a soldier injures a child while restraining another, causing panic as screams echo through the corridor. Ryan is struck and begins bleeding, yet others rush to support her, trying to keep her conscious amid the violence. An Imperial fighter declares the attack an act of rebellion, accusing the demons of provoking the army's response. Fueled by rage, Ryan denounces the invaders as monsters and rises, again despite her wounds. Far outside, Yuto and Melia notice suspicious figures approaching the castle grounds. Yuto and Melia arrive near the castle gates where two bandits block the road, hoping to seize an easy reward. Ignoring their threats, Yuto advances calmly while Melia walks beside him, leaving the men confused and unsettled. Within moments, the bandits fall defeated on the ground, realizing too late that they misjudged their opponents. Afterward, the pair continues toward the looming castle, discussing what they will do if any survivors remain inside. Yuto is struck down by Melia's fierce assault, her power crashing into him as he struggles to remain standing. Recovering quickly, he channels his unstable skill and releases a sharp counterattack. The battlefield trembles as their clash intensifies. Yuto advances without hesitation, forcing her backward with relentless pressure. Melia shields a frightened companion while preparing a decisive strike. A devastating attack took place at that place. With the aim of killing him, Yuto kneels in silence, while his former classmates watch from a distance. Dust surrounds him, and uncertainty fills the space between them as memories resurface. A young woman steps forward, unable to hide her shock. Guards and summoned heroes hesitate behind her, struggling to accept that he still lives. Suddenly, a reckless boy charges toward Yuto with desperate speed before reaching him. The boy is seized by an unseen force. Dark energy descends like a massive pillar, crushing the ground beneath. Yuto stands apart from the gathered heroes while corpses scatter across the field. Unease spreads as his former classmates suspect his involvement. A knight steps forward, defending the fallen creatures as necessary targets. Others hesitate, uncertain whether Yuto acted out of reason or cruelty. Calmly, he challenges their understanding of this world's truth. Doubt begins to surface among them. Weapons rise toward him as judgment replaces trust. Yuto remains still, prepared for conflict. A classmate rushes in desperation, pleading for restraint. The group fractures into opposing sides. Akane watches Yuto from a distance, sensing the tension surrounding him. Despite claiming calmness, unease lingers in her expression as others prepare for confrontation. Close to him, doubt clouds her eyes while his face remains unreadable. Without hesitation, a swordsman charges at Yuto with overwhelming speed. Steel arcs toward him as he stands firm. A violent clash erupts, dark power colliding against the blade. Shock spreads across the attacker's face. Their impact tears through the ground, leaving spectators stunned. A swordsman unleashes a concentrated blast toward Yuto, attempting to crush him instantly. Yuto raises his hand and withstands the force without stepping back. The explosion slams into a wall of dark energy, tearing the ground apart yet failing to wound him. Doubt spreads among the watching heroes. Akane notices the shift as Yuto advances calmly, pressing the attacker backward with steady control. Confidence hardens within him while he evaluates the hero's limits. An ally signals quietly, reinforcing his dominance over the battlefield. Yuto releases a sweeping dark strike, launching his opponent backward through shattered debris. Yuto stands before the assembled heroes as confusion spreads among them. His presence unsettles the group. Suddenly, several fighters are hurled aside by an unseen force. Turning calmly, he shields the white-haired girl while glaring at the advancing heroes. Fear begins to replace their earlier confidence. From a distance, the remaining members hesitate, realizing the balance of power has shifted beyond their control. Heroes retreat in panic while Yuto advances, protecting his companion without hesitation. Allies attempt a summoning while Yuto stands apart, listening as someone tries to stop him. Akane watches nervously, sensing his resolve hardening beyond persuasion. His silence confirms his decision. Confusion spreads among the group as orders are shouted and panic rises. Several begin scrambling to reposition. Yuto activates his absorption skill, drawing in surrounding attacks and energy without hesitation. Light gathers around him as onlookers stare in shock. Fear replaces doubt while he advances steadily forward. Yuto approaches the injured girl as others attempt to shield her. Despite their fear, he steps forward and reaches out. Panic spreads among the group when dark energy gathers around his hand. Several brace for another attack instead of striking. He releases healing magic into her wounded body. Shock replaces terror as her condition stabilizes. Leaving them behind, Yuto withdraws, without seeking gratitude. The witches remain stunned by his restraint. Across the field, fallen heroes struggle to rise, while urgency fills the air. Retreat becomes their only option. Miyamoto shouts in panic, while Onizuka lies motionless on the ground. Fear spreads rapidly among the remaining heroes. From a distance, Yuto watches silently as survivors gather their wounded. His presence keeps them tense and uncertain. Driven by desperation, a horned fighter lunges forward, ignoring the danger ahead. Anger overtakes caution as she charges. Dark energy surges outward, swallowing the path of escape and cutting off retreat. The Imperials freeze in shock. Steel collides violently as another warrior intercepts the assault. The battlefield erupts once more into fierce combat. A warrior accuses the others of fleeing, while a swordswoman steps forward to confront the advancing threat. The attacker is struck down before closing the distance, and Yuto lowers his arm after stopping her charge. A horned girl urges the group to rescue the wounded instead of continuing the fight. Yuto turns away, no longer pursuing them. He approaches a fallen opponent and checks the body without emotion. A single name crosses his mind together with his companion. Yuto surveys the field covered in defeated fighters, accepting the aftermath in silence. Yuto stands beside Melia and the fallen bodies, acknowledging that no power can restore the dead. Regret lingers between them. Silence follows as Melia lowers her gaze, burdened by loss and doubt. Yuto watches her carefully, choosing action over grief. He uses healing magic to aid injured children nearby. Relief spreads among the survivors. A horned girl approaches cautiously, questioning his true intentions. Melia listens without interrupting. Uncertainty shifts as realization dawns upon the girl. Melia's faint smile suggests a hidden truth. Yuto apologizes to the gathered villagers, while children cling to Melia in confusion. Uneasy silence follows his unexpected remorse. Nearby, Ryan kneels in frustration, blaming herself for failing to protect everyone, despite fighting desperately. Tears fall as guilt overwhelms her, convinced that her weakness caused the injuries around them. Melia steps forward and lightly strikes Ryan's head, stopping her spiral of self-blame. Instead of condemnation, Melia embraces her tightly, praising her effort and reminding her she was never alone. Melia kneels before Ryan beneath the ruined structure, holding her shoulders as rain pours over them, and survivors watch silently from afar. From a distance, Yuto observes the scene while frightened villagers stare at him, uncertain whether he remains their enemy or protector. After the tragedy, graves covered the ruined land while survivors mourned in silence. Yuto stood among them, carrying quiet guilt. Melia approached the grieving crowd and observed the devastation. Injured villagers rested nearby as tension lingered. Suddenly, dark cloaked figures appeared before the gathering. Panic spread as their presence overwhelmed the survivors. Stepping forward, Yuto confronted the threat without hesitation. Melia watched, trusting his resolve. When the danger passed, Melia accepted responsibility. Together, they prepared to guide everyone forward. Amid shattered buildings, Yuto agreed to answer questions while standing between broken walls and fading smoke. Melia faced him calmly as others asked about their connection. Yuto requested a moment before responding. With a composed expression, he decided to introduce the girl beside him. He revealed her name as Rin. Rin remained quiet while Melia hesitated slightly. Yuto struggled briefly to explain their bond. Finally, he clarified that Melia and Rin were childhood friends. The history between their races carried old alliances and protection. Driven from place to place, Rin traveled with her dwindling people, while enemies targeted the dragon race for their small numbers. Exhaustion consumed her as she nearly collapsed in the wasteland. Survival depended on enduring one more step, despite fading strength. Suddenly, a demon warrior arrived riding a massive dragon. Instead of hostility, suspicion lingered among the refugees, yet the demons allowed them to rest within their territory. Soon, they were welcomed into the demon kingdom, where an alliance formed under a shared hope for peace. Yuto learned that Rin and Melia shared a childhood bond before the royal capital fell, and demons turned to the dragon race for support. When the empire advanced, Rin lacked strength to fight and escaped during the confusion as the demon city sheltered refugees. After remaining dormant to hide her magic, she eventually returned to the ruined land. Dormancy concealed her presence and reduced the risk of discovery. Upon awakening, only the weak and injured remained in the devastated city. Rin reflected on the innocent lives lost, insisting they had done nothing to deserve such deaths. Yuto silently absorbed her grief. Tears filled her eyes while Yuto's expression hardened, the weight of responsibility settling deeper within him. Though relieved that some survived, he acknowledged that without Melia and Rin, many more would have perished. As tension eased, someone questioned Yuto's identity from a distance. Rin confidently introduced him, leaving Yuto standing awkwardly as attention shifted toward him. Yuto dismissed the concern and urged Rin to explain matters directly, while Melia observed the exchange with cautious attention. He revealed that he had been summoned alongside the heroes, but chose to oppose the Empire independently. Doubt arose over whether a hero could stand as their ally, yet Rin asserted that Yuto surpassed the others in strength. Despite arriving late, he had broken the Empire's seal and defeated a hero in battle. Later, Yuto admitted he had also discovered a method to launch a counterattack. Yuto activated his power and summoned small robed creatures surrounding the area with unfamiliar beings under his control. Observing them closely, he concluded the Empire once transferred abilities using this same summoning method. Realization spread as Melia understood that Yuto could steal and permanently use the skills of others. Although once labeled an unlucky ability, the power proved extraordinary and far from useless. Compared to legendary skills like Hero and Ogre God, his absorbing ability quietly rivaled their overwhelming strength. Yuto accepted the counterattack, recalling fallen enemies and Melia's trust in his strength. After learning the Empire orchestrated the tragedy, Yuto prepared to move against them. Meanwhile, a desperate captive urged immediate action, fearing endless loss if nothing changed. Standing before ruined streets, Yuto considered the risks while Melia and Rin waited for his decision. Soon, their destination became clear: the Holy Empire Valencia. Inside the Imperial Castle's guest hall, officials gathered, unaware that retaliation was already approaching. Inside the Imperial facility, several captives recovered in a guarded treatment room under watchful eyes. A nurse checked on a young woman who insisted her wounds had vanished without leaving scars. Overcome with fear, she clung to a cane, desperate to avoid reliving the pain. Suddenly, a bandaged boy confronted Akanin, demanding answers about her concealed abilities. Maintaining composure, Akanin explained that her power merely enhanced her eyesight slightly. Akanin firmly denied hiding anything, yet her intense gaze unsettled the others in the room. Turning away, she insisted she had witnessed Nakatani's actions personally, and would explain everything clearly. Recalling his supposed weak absorption skill, she questioned the assumption that it merely drew things in. Through her enhanced vision, she had seen Nakatani possessing an overwhelming number of abilities. Before the gathered group, she revealed that Yuto Nakatani now held countless skills beyond imagination. Akain repeated that her ability only enhanced her vision, insisting she knew nothing beyond what she personally witnessed. Frustration consumed the bandaged boy as he questioned the nature of Yuto's overwhelming power. Lowering her gaze, Akanin rejected the claim that such strength was cowardly. Elsewhere in the corridor, uncertainty spread among the group about confronting Yuto and protecting the demons. Anxious thoughts deepened as they wondered what the Empire truly wanted from them. Akain urgently called out as the group gathered, startled by sudden arrivals at the entrance. Attention shifted when a composed older man appeared, observing the injured boy and addressing Menace calmly. He remarked on the hero's worn strength and noted that even heroic abilities seemed diminished. Introducing himself as Malcolm Salsford, the finance minister, he questioned their loyalties and intentions. With measured confidence, Malcolm offered guidance while hinting at the Empire's awareness of the demonic remnants. Malcolm calmly explained that without intervention, the heroes would have suffered far worse and could not afford further failure. Smiling faintly, he described a hero defeated by an imperfect skill, offering knowledge about demons and Yuto's power. Malcolm suggested negotiating while there was still time. He warned that information functioned as a weapon and that missing demons might already be dead. With quiet pressure, Malcolm urged swift revenge, noting the remnants could only hide for so long. The bandaged hero suddenly lunged forward, striking Malcolm while guards reacted too slowly. Grabbing the minister by the collar, he demanded Yuto's location and accused him of deception. Despite the chaos, Malcolm remained composed as others struggled to restrain the furious hero. Rage escalated as the hero insisted on learning how Yuto used his strange skill. Breathing heavily, he compared that power to the Demon King's strength, and condemned Yuto as a coward. Malcolm boasted of his family's records, while Rin watched silently, sensing hidden schemes. Salisford Mansion loomed over the escorted students as they were led inside under watchful guards and uncertain purpose. Inside a private chamber, the chosen heroes gathered while their host steered attention toward a troubling power. At a long ceremonial table, proceedings formally began beneath towering walls and silent scrutiny. Focus shifted to the first dungeon they had conquered, recalling a force encountered there. Beyond the capital, the Imperial Underground Labyrinth stood. The host disclosed that the cleared dungeon had once been ruled by the Demon King and that the mission served as a calculated trial. A restrained girl was identified as the Demon King's daughter, drawing guarded attention from everyone present. It was explained she had been sealed deep underground. Responsibility for her escape became a pressing concern among the group. Nakatani was singled out as the one who fought her and broke the seal with his power. Memories of the dungeon resurfaced, showing Yuto standing apart while the sealed girl remained central to the unease. The host stated that humans were fragile, and hero summoning existed to secure survival against stronger races. An ancient figure named Rei was introduced as a hero who gathered immense power and annihilated the demons. Despite that history, Yudo was deemed inferior to the kingdom's expectations. Still, it was acknowledged he once overpowered a formidable foe alone. The heroes pressed for explanations about Yudo, ignoring wider threats and focusing their anger on his role. The host stated that summoned heroes could acquire the abilities of those they faced. He clarified that the ancient hero Redi had possessed that same adaptable power. By confronting many opponents, Redi steadily increased his strength through their skills. In time, that accumulated power surpassed the world's limits, and fragments of it were distributed among the current heroes. The host insisted the heroes combine their powers, presenting unity as the path to greater strength. Without warning, the banquet table exploded from a sudden strike, scattering debris across the hall. Stunned silence followed, as the attack was recognized as one hero's distinct ability. Its effortless reproduction confirmed that someone had already mastered copying another's skill, far beyond the mansion. The quiet city remained unaware that this revelation would soon disturb its fragile order. Yudo walked through the city with two companions, adjusting to lighter clothes while trying to avoid attention. Concern arose about revealing their identities, since wearing attire linked to the demon lord carried clear risk. They slowed their pace, quietly assessing the streets and considering whether greater caution was necessary. Discussion turned to local unrest, including thieves and bandits, questioning if the area was truly safe. Reassurance followed that a barrier protected the capital. Yuto discovered the letter came from Malcolm Salisford, the empire's finance minister. Citizens described him as a corrupt noble who abused money and authority within his territory. Unease lingered in the streets, and Yuto sensed growing tension around the minister's name. Choosing caution, the group decided to gather information before taking action. They questioned locals in the plaza, unaware their quiet investigation was being closely observed. Yuto observed a grieving citizen and concluded he understood the depth of suffering within the minister's territory. He learned the Salisford family once helped defeat the Demon King. As heroes gained influence, the empire began fearing their rising strength and independence. History was rewritten into a legend claiming a hero sacrificed himself, though rumors suggested betrayal. After reflecting on those accounts, Yudo accepted that the empire was capable of eliminating its own hero. They confirmed Malcolm Salisford exploited his authority to pressure and control the citizens. His public reforms concealed child trafficking from slums into noble households. Fury deepened as more disappearances were linked to his administration. Recognizing the true enemy, Yuto steadied himself for confrontation. They decided to secure a weapon suited for Yuto before moving against the empire. Yuto walks through the city as Melia guides him, helping him understand the unfamiliar world while heading toward a weapons shop. The shop exterior reveals displays of armor and weapons, presented as a reward for Rin and preparation for future battles. After defeating the skeletal dragon, its valuable horn was sold. Inside, the shopkeeper proudly presents swords and shields. Yuto inspects the blade carefully while Melia observes, confirming the weapon's durability and finalizing their decision. Yuto examines the weapons displayed along the wall, pausing at a magical tool said to control power yet seeming unimpressive. The shopkeeper explains it commemorates summoned heroes, and claims ordinary humans cannot handle such strength. Dismissing it as decoration, Yuto selects another item, leaving the shopkeeper startled. Nearby, Melia lifts a massive axe with ease, impressed. The shopkeeper acknowledges their ability and finalizes the sale. Melia reacts to the high price while Yuto remains calm, allowing the negotiation to proceed without hesitation. She places a heavy pouch of coins on the counter, confirming they earned money from dungeon materials. The shopkeeper accepts the payment and returns the magical glove, assuring them of the store's reliable dealings. He explains most items are custom, made for nobles, built beyond ordinary standards. Interested, Yuto requests details about a specific order, preparing for future needs. Melia questions Yuto's purpose at the store, while he casually thanks her and finishes preparing his purchase. A letter from Mr. Salisford is revealed, instantly drawing their focus. Within the empire, a sharp-eyed figure watches events unfold in silence. Officials assemble in a vast conference room, considering survival even against summoned heroes. Doubt rises as they discuss the Demon King's daughter and the threat hidden beyond the dungeon. Dennis confidently assures the council that the heroes will grow stronger under his careful planning and oversight. Smirking, he reveals reliance on his private army rather than any hero, dismissing others as unnecessary. The meeting concludes with authority delegating financial control of the heroes to Dennis without objection. Alone, he laughs with satisfaction, convinced his strategy secures absolute influence. Outside the empire, a carriage departs as mocking laughter echoes, hinting at schemes already unfolding. Gazing over the night city, Malcolm quietly vows that the highest seat of power will soon belong to him alone. He returns to his castle, welcomed formally as servants acknowledge his authority. Inside, Malcolm mocks the missing hero and demands a report from his butler. The butler trembles, admitting no information has been received. Angered by the failure, Malcolm strikes him down. Furious at incompetence and unanswered uncertainty, Malcolm fumes over missing reports, angered by wasted money and manpower without progress. His father suddenly appears at the stairway, announcing his return. Confidently, Malcolm claims he has subdued the stray heroes and secured control. The father warns him not to underestimate the hero and questions his awareness. Under the Grand Dome, Malcolm hides his unease behind forced composure. Malcolm storms through the corridor, blaming his subordinates for failure as he heads toward the prison area. Inside the cells, he inspects the captured children and decides they will serve his plans without being killed. Watching the sealed girl beyond the bars, Malcolm quietly promises future assistance. Yuto and Melia decide to head toward the forest, confident their strength makes minor threats irrelevant. Along the path, bait is scattered to draw attention while Yuto questions Melia's sudden involvement. Hidden among trees, he considers the nature of the heroes and remains cautious about their intentions. Melia reveals she intends to reduce unrest within the territory through calculated action. Understanding her aim, Yuto suggests allowing the heroes to corner Malcolm instead. Yuto explains that regardless of past crimes, they cannot ignore suffering within their territory and must act carefully. He considers which heroes are most likely to move, while Rin quietly approaches Melia. Unease passes between them as uncertainty about the situation lingers. Melia reflects that Yuto was originally summoned as a hero, shaping their current path. Suddenly, suspicion rises as they question the true purpose of the bait. A hidden attacker lunges from the forest, but Yuto reacts instantly and intercepts the strike. The ambusher is slammed to the ground, subdued before causing harm to Melia and Rin. Kneeling beside him, Yuto calmly confirms the man's connection to the heroes. Pressing further, he orders a message to be delivered, disregarding any moral restraint. Coldly, Yuto exposes the finance minister's crimes, ensuring the terrified captive understands the consequences. Yuto warns the captive that mercy will not be offered again, pressing him about allies connected to the heroes. Terrified, the man admits they pass information to the heroes, and reveals identifying marks shared among his companions. After confirming the details, Yuto releases him with orders to spread a message. Melia observes quietly, noting his calculated restraint. With the warning delivered, the group resumes their advance through the forest. Having gathered sufficient information on the minister, Yuto decides the next step is to lure him out and strike directly. As they move through the forest, doubts arise about the minister's military strength and possible reinforcements. At the finance minister's training ground, several heroes continue drills under supervision. A sudden explosion interrupts practice, drawing their attention immediately. Amid the confusion, some praise Miyamoto's talent, while others dismiss weaker recruits. At the training ground, several heroes argue about their limited abilities, while Miyamoto trains with visible confidence. Nearby, others worry about their progress and struggle to improve after recent exhaustion. Concern spreads regarding lingering effects on a teammate, raising doubts about their readiness. Rumors circulate about Malcolm's territory and possible slavery, deepening their unease. Despite fear, they conclude they must keep training and stay close to Miyamoto to survive future battles. At the training grounds, a hero reports gaining only a few new abilities, drawing quiet dissatisfaction from Malcolm. Confident in his private soldiers, Malcolm dismisses the hero's usefulness and boasts about his own forces. A hero challenges him, demanding those powerful abilities be handed over instead. Amused, Malcolm accepts the provocation without concern for consequences. With a smirk, he orders his subordinate to entertain the request. Under Malcolm's command, a powerful human soldier steps forward, and the gathered heroes tense as the order is enforced. The warrior removes his cloak, revealing his strength while Malcolm watches with clear amusement. Without hesitation, he strikes one hero down, ignoring resistance and holding back only from killing. The injured fighter collapses as Malcolm observes, satisfied that events unfold as expected. Smiling coldly, Malcolm considers tightening control further while the remaining heroes stand shaken. Ruined towers loomed over a silent courtyard where Yuto waited inside the fractured hall. Deep within the forest, he disclosed their location to the hero and Malcolm, expecting swift movement after the message was delivered. Across the opposing group, Akane Sajo's influence over the heroes signaled the conflict would escalate beyond a minor clash. Beside him, Melia reviewed enemy capabilities with Yuto, as they finalized strategies before the impending confrontation. Melia revealed that Naoki Miyamoto held the title of hero, commanding the greatest influence among the summoned students within the empire. Although his hero skill was known to be powerful, Yuto stated that Iwao Onizuka, who once attacked him. Since arriving, Onizuka caused unrest within the empire, making him a possible catalyst for internal conflict among their enemies. Standing calmly, Milia expressed quiet confidence in their combined influence. Yuto identified 4 more individuals requiring attention, beginning with Akane Sajo. Her ability allowed her to sense intentions and emotional shifts by approaching others, regardless of their age or danger. For now, her decisions would likely follow Malcolm's lead. Because she possessed both influence and skill, her choices could significantly redirect the opposing faction's priorities. Lastly, Yuto noted Minace Natsuki, a healer whose standing among the heroes rivaled Miyamoto's authority. Minace earned widespread trust among classmates because strength defined judgment in their former world. Yuto next named Lino Nagisa and Kaido Saya, noting Kaido once crossed blades with Rin. From his perspective, those two lacked broad influence. Both originated from notable families where martial skill was expected, and Miyamoto had connections to them as well. After reviewing every figure, Yuto's concern shifted from their arrival to the consequences their involvement would create. Within the ruined hall, Yuto evaluated Rin's abilities while reassessing the strengths and limits of his own techniques. Although he controlled Waterblade effectively, Dragon technique still lacked refinement, demanding additional discipline and practice. Reassured by Milia's confidence, he settled into patience as their group prepared to wait for developments. Meanwhile, Lord Roy moved through the ministry corridor, troubled by rising instability inside the empire. Chancellor Dennis soon appeared before him, hinting at deeper political complications unfolding. Within the ministry corridor, Chancellor Dennis informed Lord Roy that his visit carried a deliberate purpose. Discussion turned toward the rogue hero, whose group evaded financial tracking. Rather than ordering immediate subjugation, Dennis assigned Roy a separate investigation requiring discretion. The task targeted the finance minister, with authority granted to eliminate him if corruption was confirmed. After Dennis departed, Roy acknowledged the emperor's growing concern while assuring officials that operations continued smoothly. Dennis reminded Roy that failure would not be tolerated, pressing the weight of imperial expectations upon him. Soon after, he raised another matter, hinting at troubling rumors connected to Roy's governed territory. Conversation shifted toward past conflicts with the Beastmen. Acknowledging the Beastmen's former strength, Dennis emphasized the Empire's long struggle to secure that region. Concluding firmly, he declared that any surviving bloodline posed a threat and must be eliminated without exception. Rumors spread that survivors of the Beastmen bloodline remained, threatening the authority behind the Salisbury family's rule. Dennis urged Finance Minister Malcolm to uphold his family's duty and maintain control over the governed territory. Once alone, Malcolm panicked, questioning how confidential information about the bloodline had leaked. Desperate to redirect attention, he decided to focus on eliminating the rogue hero to secure his position. Overcome with obsession, Malcolm rejoiced after discovering leads. Malcolm contemplated the dungeon where his family perished, realizing that rumors of survivors threatened his authority. Far away, a witch-like woman acknowledged her resistance against the heroes had limits, leaving the situation uncertain. Miyamoto trained relentlessly, with armed soldiers, sharpening his strength as conflict approached. At the same time, Yuto and Milia gathered their allies, anticipating the coming clash. Under the night sky, carriages moved across the wasteland as soldiers advanced toward a distant ruin. Ahead of them, a dark gate stood open on the barren field, marking the beginning of the midnight march as tension spread among the approaching forces. From a ridge, armored riders observed the cracked earth below, calmly confirming their strategy, while maintaining control of the unfolding operation. Inside the ruins, Yuto rested against a wall beside Milia, conserving strength while awaiting the inevitable clash drawing closer. Soon after, riders entered the courtyard, and Yuto rose steadily, sensing their arrival as the confrontation finally began. Armored boots stepped into the underground passage as the group advanced cautiously, suspecting Yuto was hiding somewhere within the cold ruins. Behind them, more students followed, unsettled by the heavy air and unnatural chill spreading deeper below the surface. Suddenly, a massive swarm of small summoned creatures poured from a dark opening, blocking the path and startling everyone. As the creatures scattered across the hall, confusion spread among the students, while one girl realized the overwhelming number belonged to her power. Moments later, a composed blonde knight stepped forward, certain he had finally located Yuto inside the ancient structure. Within the ruined corridor, the blonde knight confronted Yuto and labeled him a coward, accusing him of hiding behind stolen strength. Standing firm, Yuto faced the accusation calmly, while the knight criticized his ability to gain skills without effort. Silence followed as Yuto offered no defense, observing the knight's confidence without visible emotion. Without further warning, Yuto declared he would no longer allow interference, revealing he had gathered additional abilities. In the next instant, he struck decisively, overwhelming the knight with sudden force and ending the exchange in a single blow. The defeated knight struggled on the ground, while Yuto watched silently, and Melia prepared to intervene as tension rose again. Another student rushed forward to attack, assuming Yuto was retreating, but Melia moved first to block the assault, positioning herself between them. Melia declared that facing such an opponent did not require Yuto's involvement. Their weapons collided violently, shockwaves bursting through the corridor as both fighters clashed at close range. After the impact settled, Yuto remained calm beside Melia, quietly acknowledging her resolve while the battle continued around them. A noble youth declared that their objective was to overthrow the imperial treasurer, Malcolm Salisford, and expose his corruption before the kingdom. Meanwhile, Yuto and his allies aimed to avoid unnecessary conflict with the summoned heroes while securing proof of Malcolm's crimes. Hidden within the ruins, Yuto sensed the gathered students approaching sooner than expected, disrupting his careful timing. Frustration spread among both sides as tension escalated, and armed fighters prepared themselves for direct confrontation. Soon after, members of the dragon tribe clashed with the opposing forces surrounding their enemies as the battle intensified. As the clash continued, a dragon tribe warrior moved to confront the advancing heroes while others prepared to eliminate the immediate threat. Without warning, two towering constructs emerged, their glowing cores activating as they descended between both sides of the battlefield. Suddenly, the heroes realized their abilities had stopped functioning, leaving them confused and unable to rely on their powers. Amid the disorder, one figure mocked their helplessness, while weapons and shields became useless against the unfolding trap. From above the ruins, Malcolm appeared and revealed that the entire location had been designed to isolate and neutralize the hero. Malcolm praised the hero for successfully drawing everyone into the ruins, calmly acknowledging that they had been bound to the prepared location. Above the courtyard, floating devices activated and projected a barrier that spread across the area, sealing away every skill within its range. Realization struck the trapped fighters as their powers failed, leaving even the strongest among them unable to activate their abilities. Panic grew throughout the crowd while Malcolm observed their confusion, confident that none of them could resist the trap. With a composed smile, he revealed that a previous hero had once perished inside the same barrier. After hearing Malcolm's revelation, the students recalled the fallen hero Rei, and realized the barrier had once claimed someone said to be overwhelmingly powerful. Confident in the barrier's effect, the blonde knight concluded that Yuto was now reduced to an ordinary person and could finally be subdued. Watching their reactions, Malcolm declared his intent to eliminate everyone trapped inside the sealed ruins. Shock spread among the gathered students as they understood they were no longer allies in a mission, but obstacles standing in Malcolm's path. In the capital, people continued praising the hero while Malcolm stood apart, feeling overlooked despite his authority and ambition. Soon after, political power shifted toward him as he gained control over the knights and military affairs, consolidating influence within the empire. Determined to prove himself without relying on any hero, he summoned beastmen forces to demonstrate his independent strength. From a high platform, his troops prepared for battle, confident they could confront any demon through sheer force alone. Moments later, combat erupted as warriors charged forward, striking fiercely to validate Malcolm's claim of power. As tension spread across the field, students gathered and watched the approaching forces while calling out to one another in confusion. Suddenly, beastmen surged forward under the lights, charging aggressively toward the disorganized heroes. Despite lacking their skills, several fighters resisted with raw physical strength, striking back against the advancing enemies. Across the battlefield, observers noted how the beastmen fought fiercely, appearing energized by the chaos of combat. From above, Malcolm dismissed them as creatures meant to be controlled, reinforcing his belief that they were nothing more than tools for war. Amid the chaos, a beastman swung his weapon in a wide arc, forcing nearby fighters to retreat from the sudden strike. Nearby, Yuto stood calmly as Melia joined him, both recognizing that defeating the beastmen would not solve the real problem. Observing closely, Yuto noticed the collars around the beastmen's necks and concluded that Malcolm was controlling their actions through curses. Beyond the battlefield, restrained beastmen waited in captivity, while Melia prepared to remove the curses despite the heavy strain it would cause her. As the fighting continued in the distance, concern shifted toward the powerless heroes and what role they could still play. Yuto agreed to Melia's request to avoid killing the beastmen, understanding that they were unwilling participants under Malcolm's control. As she moved to engage, he remained composed, confident that the situation could be handled without unnecessary deaths. When a beastman lunged toward them, Yuto reacted instantly, striking with precise force that sent the attacker crashing aside. After observing the result, he concluded that only the activation of skills was sealed, not the physical enhancements already integrated into his body. With that realization, he instructed his allies to advance, trusting their strength while preparing to confront the remaining enemies. Watching from a distance, several students realized that Yuto and his small group were overpowering the beastmen with controlled precision. Determination replaced hesitation as some heroes decided to support the fight, rather than retreat further. Before they could advance, a bald student suddenly froze, sensing something tightening painfully around his neck. Shock spread through the surrounding students as they noticed the collar activating, forcing his body to move against his will. Moments later, his uncontrolled charge triggered panic among his classmates, who screamed as the situation spiraled beyond their expectations. As injuries mounted, some students realized healing was impossible without their sealed skills, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. Nearby Malcolm applauded mockingly while one fighter collapsed, marking the first casualty under his cruel design. Standing amid the turmoil, Yuto remained silent as a beastman behind him showed disturbing excitement during the violence. From a distance, Malcolm ordered the beastmen to continue slaughtering both heroes and women without restraint. Hearing those commands, Yuto's expression hardened, his eyes widening as anger replaced his earlier restraint. As Malcolm continued issuing orders, Yuto's allies gathered behind him, sensing his anger and preparing themselves for what he intended to do next. Noticing Yuto's glare, Malcolm mocked him carelessly, convinced that the sealed barrier left him powerless to interfere. Instead of hesitating, Yuto activated his absorption ability, drawing in surrounding energy, despite the suppression field. Surprised but unfazed, Malcolm insisted that minor instability did not matter and signaled for further control measures. Moments later, floating devices flared brighter, unleashing intense pressure that forced nearby fighters to clutch their heads in pain. As the pressure intensified, Malcolm ordered his subordinates to hurry and release the next phase of his plan, without delay. Confident in his advantage, he declared that once they faced his hidden weapon, none of them would stand a chance. Soon after, two identical beastmen named Nona appeared, descending with massive blades and awaiting his command to eliminate the intruders. Without hesitation, one Nona closed the distance and confronted Yuto directly, her sharp grin revealing eagerness for battle. At the same moment, Melia rushed to his side as another Nona launched forward, shattering the ground while the fight escalated. As the massive blades crashed down, the twin beastmen regrouped while Malcolm reassured them, confident the assault would overwhelm their targets. However, when the dust cleared, Yuto and Melia remained standing, calmly confirming their survival as the real battle prepared to continue. Before the Empire's massive structure, Yuto advanced alone and pressed his hand against its surface. Suddenly, his body was thrown back by the violent reaction, yet he steadied himself midair, eyes sharp and fixed on the barrier ahead. Moments later, allies and enemies surrounded him across the battlefield, while he calculated their movements and prepared to secure more time. Instead of retreating, he stepped forward, cloak sweeping behind him, and drew upon the strength he had stolen to confront the approaching threat. As twin attackers lunged from both sides, Yuto stood firm at the center, releasing a force that halted their advance and shifted the battle's flow. A sudden surge of magic formed a massive ice crystal that erupted from the ground, forcing enemies backward as Yuto faced the unexpected attack. Fragments of shattered frost floated through the air while he assessed the barrier's strength, realizing it contained far more power than predicted. Without hesitation, he moved to intercept a charging foe, raising his blade and striking downward to block the incoming assault. Across the battlefield, winged opponents swept in from both sides, carving arcs through the ground as they attempted to overwhelm him. Amid the chaos, a predatory figure closed in behind Yuto, drawn by his magic. A violent whirlwind surged across the battlefield as two beast-like women rushed forward, blades drawn, trying to overpower Yuto through sheer speed. Their excitement grew as they closed in on him, sensing his magic, while he remained steady, despite the blood and dust marking his face. Elsewhere, a frightened boy stumbled back, unaware of the shadowy force forming behind him as Yuto rejected the chaos spreading around them. With a sharp motion, Yuto released a concentrated blast that carved a tunnel through the raging wind, forcing the attackers away. When the dust settled, he lowered his guard slightly, watching the shaken enemies regroup while distant classmates stared in confusion at the aftermath. Blinding speed tore across the battlefield as Yuto clashed with a fierce opponent, his movements too fast for the others to follow. Nearby classmates hesitated, questioning whether they could truly defeat him while he guarded himself with controlled precision. Suddenly, towering pillars of light descended from the sky as a powerful spell reshaped the field and forced everyone to halt. As the radiance faded, Yuto felt strength returning to his body while confusion spread among those who had been pressing the attack. Realization struck the group that the balance had shifted, and fear flickered across their faces as the possibility of killing their enemies emerged. Tension spread among the group as a young woman questioned their actions, while a nervous swordsman trembled beside her, unsure of the choice before them. Across the field, former enemies prepared to strike again, and hesitation faded as the confrontation threatened to erupt once more. Before anyone reacted, a swift figure descended from above, forcing Yuto and the others to shift their focus toward the sudden intrusion. A blond young man stepped forward and confronted Yuto directly, frustration evident as he accused him of disrupting every plan. Memories of isolation surfaced as classmates once knelt in fear, and the weight of blame settled again on Yuto's shoulders. A blond young man confronted the group with agitation, while the dark-haired woman beside him observed calmly. Yuto stepped forward with steady composure, stating that if the dispute concerned the blonde fighter alone, the others should withdraw and leave the matter to him. Anger flared across the blond man's face as pride overpowered reason, his voice rising while the surrounding warriors watched the tension escalate. Driven by desperation, he lunged recklessly toward the center, ignoring the warnings of his allies as shadows closed in behind him. In a swift motion, his advance was halted, and his body jerked forward by an unseen strike. A blonde official intervened and struck down the reckless attacker, declaring that their side would administer strict punishment to prevent further chaos. Standing above the fractured arena, he revealed his pursuit of Chancellor Malcolm, and admitted the assault against the Empire's heroes could not be ignored. Facing Yuto calmly, he suggested the young fighter might serve a greater purpose than being left to the heroes. From the lower level, a pale woman announced a condition, stating that the beastmen would be taken along as part of their resolution. With a measured smile, the official concluded that the barrier had lost meaning. Through the shattered opening, Yuto stood facing a distant official while defeated beastmen knelt behind him, the battlefield quiet after the earlier clash. From the opposite side, the blond man demanded answers, accusing Yuto of selfish actions as the dark-haired fighter lowered his gaze without retreating. Silence stretched across the ruined ground, bodies scattered between them, as the official advanced alone toward Yuto with steady resolve. Later inside a grand hall, the captured minister was forced up the stairs, and under intense scrutiny, he was pressed to reveal the full truth. Rumors of a rising anomaly reach the capital as an elder concludes the matter can no longer be overlooked. The summoned hero once deemed insignificant now moves beyond control. Reports confirm he travels apart from his classmates, forming ties with dangerous bloodlines linked to demons and beastmen. Concern spreads through the chamber. A noble acknowledges his poor judgment, realizing he underestimated the young hero's growth. Sharp reprimands fall upon a masked subordinate, exposing fear beneath strained obedience. Elsewhere, dragon survivors, a demon lord's daughter, and a beastkin descendant stand beside the rebel, marking open defiance. Nakatani Yuto stands apart from the court, now recognized as the strongest among the summoned heroes. His return forces the nobles to confront consequences they tried to avoid. Footsteps echo across the grand staircase as officials scramble to reorganize authority. Plans shift quickly, including replacing the Minister of Finance to stabilize control. Discussion turns to Salisford, once assigned to a chosen hero. That arrangement has collapsed, leaving responsibility uncertain. A masked official questions whether the noble truly understands his fragile position. Guards move to intervene as tension sharpens. Leaning close, the noble reminds him that only one matter remains unresolved: the safety and future of his family. Inside the throne room, a declaration echoes that nobles possess special privileges. Guards seize a disgraced official, dragging him forward while explaining that privilege carries heavy responsibility. Failure now demands accountability not only for him, but for his entire bloodline. Overcome with shame, the noble lowers his head, unable to endure the weight of judgment. Authority strips away his title, declaring he was never fit to stand among true aristocrats. Sudden commotion interrupts the proceedings when an armored figure forces entry into the chamber. Shock ripples across the hall. Calmly, another presence urges restraint, insisting that listening first will reveal the truth behind the chaos. Foreign Affairs Minister Vale returns to the throne room as tension lingers from earlier judgment. A masked knight urgently announces he carries grave news concerning the summoned heroes. Shock spreads when it is revealed that hero Onizuka murdered 3 fellow heroes and escaped with 2 others. The chamber falls into heavy silence. The witness insists he confirmed the truth, personally, leaving no room for doubt. Responsibility shifts toward Minister Roy as decisive action becomes necessary. Orders are issued without hesitation, and a trusted subordinate departs to respond. Confidence masks the growing instability within the kingdom. Elsewhere, frantic cries for healing magic echo through dark corridors. A trembling healer reaches toward a wounded companion as the remaining heroes watch in horror. Fear tightens their expressions, while faint hope lingers in her desperate attempt. Bodies lie scattered across blood-soaked ground, confirming the battle's brutal outcome. The healer collapses beside a fallen friend. Grief overwhelms the survivors as they realize their bonds from another world could not save them here. Regret spreads among them, heavy and suffocating. Officials arrive too late, stunned by the carnage before their eyes. Recognition dawns that the conflict has escalated beyond control. Through tears, a shaken survivor reveals that Nakatani and Onizuka caused the devastation, leaving trust shattered beyond repair. In a dim chamber, accusations erupt as one hero breaks down, insisting reckless desires destroyed everything. Two girls stand nearby, silent and exhausted, while tension thickens the air. A composed young woman steps forward, offering to explain the truth. The military minister watches carefully, uncertainty clouding his judgment. Anger suddenly explodes among the group, old frustrations surfacing without restraint. Accusations fly as loyalty fractures under pressure. Insults escalate into shouting, pride clashing with wounded fear. Restraint disappears completely. Violence erupts in an instant, one hero striking another with brutal force. Shock spreads across the room as blood confirms their unity has finally collapsed. A severed head crashes onto the floor, rolling across the blood-stained ground. The attacker stares at his own arm in confusion, while the others freeze in disbelief. Screams tear through the chamber as the body collapses beside spreading crimson. Several heroes recoil, unable to process the sudden brutality. Shock twists into grim amusement on Onizuka's face. Those nearest attempt to restrain him, realizing too late that reason no longer reaches him, before anyone can react. He draws twin weapons with steady hands. Gunfire erupts across the hall, bullets striking without hesitation. Laughter echoes as more bodies fall, marking the complete descent into madness. Onizuka approaches a wounded companion with a twisted grin, mocking the value of her convenient skill. Three girls attempt to stop him, blades drawn, but the clash ends quickly. By the time others arrive, the confrontation is already over. Survivors explain that Onizuka vanished after forcing two heroes to accompany him. Resentment grows as they admit they once considered him a friend. Far from the bloodshed, Yuto listens in silence, eyes steady as he weighs the outcome. A ruined stronghold rises beyond the trees. Before the gates of the demon capital Arganum, Yuto stands with new allies, quietly accepting the path ahead. Yuto allows displaced beastmen to remain within the ruined capital, acknowledging the growing number who now rely on him. Their presence signals a shift in power and allegiance. However, he refuses to let them continue living in fear and disorder, as before. Watching the scattered survivors, he decides change is necessary. With firm resolve, Yuto declares the creation of a new nation. Allies gather behind him, accepting his leadership and the uncertain future ahead. Ruined buildings surround Yuto as he stands before Melia in a devastated land. Determination settles within him after betrayal shapes his resolve. Melia studies him quietly, measuring his intent. A faint smile suggests she understands the path he has chosen. Elsewhere, imperial forces gather, while tension spreads. Timing becomes crucial as plans begin moving forward. Knowledge of the Empire's minister and hero sharpens Yuto's focus. Eliminating them becomes central to dismantling the nation's power. Melia walks calmly through shattered remains. Confident disorder will soon consume the Empire. Yuto declares the ruined territory will become a city for demons. Melia listens as he outlines rebuilding it step by step. The vision of a demon city spreads among survivors. Hope quietly replaces despair as people imagine restored streets and safety. Uncertainty crosses Yuto's mind about leading a nation. Melia remains composed, prompting him to consider responsibility carefully. Suddenly, a hostile figure lunges toward them. Yuto reacts instantly, intercepting the attack with decisive force. An explosion erupts in the distance, shaking the ground. Allies call out as dust rises, signaling the beginning of open conflict. Yuto wakes to Nina and Nona hovering over him, their energy restored. Pain lingers in his body, yet their presence reassures him. The twins cling to Yuto, while Melia observes calmly. Their attachment shows growing trust as daily life slowly stabilizes. A group approaches from the ruined outskirts. Tension rises when a stern man steps forward to address Yuto directly. Discussion turns toward building a new nation under Melia's name. Doubts surface about leadership and the legacy of the Demon King. Yuto studies the twins thoughtfully. Suspicion emerges regarding their lineage. suggesting deeper ties to royal blood. The stern man questions Yuto's reasoning while survivors gather behind him. Confidence shows in Yuto's gaze, despite the challenge. Differences between their group and true demons are clarified. Yuto accepts the distinction without retreating from his position. Memories of living among beastmen surface as the man explains their origins. Their small community survived by adapting quietly. Power becomes the center of attention as the man admits his overwhelming strength. Concern spreads about imbalance within the growing faction. Yuto reflects on claims that certain individuals were meant to be special. Doubt lingers as he questions whether destiny truly defined them. A winged woman recalls her former leader with respect, describing him as powerful yet compassionate. Her words influence the gathered beastmen. Some among them admit they once intended to follow that predecessor. The past still shapes their hesitation. The discussion shifts toward the proposed nation's meaning for beastmen. Yuto listens as doubts arise about whether its creation truly benefits them. Melia evaluates the concerns while Yuto asserts independence as the priority. Strength at the helm reduces fear of external threats. The exchange concludes as the report ends. Decisions now rest on whether unity will outweigh lingering uncertainty. Inside the palace, the king dismisses his minister after reviewing growing complications. Regret surfaces as he reflects on mismanaging the summoned heroes. Attention shifts to hero Nakatani, whose actions now demand immediate response. Advisors agree the situation cannot be ignored. Reports confirm Onizuka and his companions escaped into vast territory. Tracking them grows difficult as uncertainty spreads among officials. Roy assures the throne that the Empire's military has already located their target. Confidence returns to the chamber. An order is issued to capture Onizuka and his followers. Preparations begin as Imperial forces mobilize under strict command. Within the throne room, the king questions who can defeat Hero Onizuka. Tension spreads as officials consider the threat he poses. Minister Roy proposes uniting the remaining heroes under his authority. Doubts emerge regarding their loyalty and past opposition. Discussion turns to military command and the Black Wolf Army. Leadership responsibility is weighed carefully before a decision forms. The king assigns negotiation with the stray hero Nakatani Yuto as a crucial role. Strategy begins shifting from force to diplomacy. Concerns arise about abandoning the Black Wolf and confronting powerful enemies. Even with strong heroes, victory remains uncertain. The king acknowledges Lord Salisford's control over the beastmen and agrees a temporary ceasefire must be arranged until Hero Onizuka is eliminated. From the balcony, he reflects that summoning heroes failed to stabilize the realm. Officials stand in silence as doubt spreads. Frustration grows when unmet expectations create further instability. Realizing the balance of power has shifted, the king prepares for difficult consequences. Inside the grand hall, unease spreads as officials mention Nakatani again. The king, exhausted, listens, while the possibility of a dungeon is raised. A minister addresses the gathered heroes with calculated politeness. Hidden intentions surface as he prepares to guide them toward his plan. Attention shifts to the upcoming imperial parade. Attendance is framed as mandatory, binding the heroes closer to the throne. Some heroes show reluctance, overwhelmed by expectations and pressure. Fatigue becomes visible among the summoned group. From the shadows, observers quietly watch the exchange. Suspicion lingers as political maneuvering deepens within the palace. Before the assembled heroes, a minister warns that refusing the parade will bring consequences. Unease spreads as the threat becomes clear. Rumors about 3 newly turned stray heroes intensify concerns. Nakatani Yuto is described as unpredictable, increasing tension within the chamber. Public perception becomes the central issue as officials argue the difference between loyal and stray heroes appears minimal. Reputation begins to outweigh truth. Pressure mounts when they are told their standing will decline if chaos erupts first. Anxiety grows among the gathered fighters. Responsibility shifts toward Hiro Miyamoto as a solution is demanded. The burden of restoring order is placed firmly upon him. In the palace chamber, a minister corners Miyamoto and reminds him that escape is impossible. Authority over the group is subtly reinforced. Attention shifts as Miyamoto is identified as the central figure among the heroes. His public image is emphasized as a stabilizing symbol. Officials describe him as a radiant presence capable of restoring confidence. Expectation quietly settles onto his shoulders. Uneasy reactions ripple through the room, while hidden observers listen. Suspicion grows about the true objective behind the proposal. Responsibility for dealing with Onizuka and the stray heroes is assigned to Minister Roy. Questions remain about how the Empire will proceed. News spreads that Valet is traveling to negotiate with Nakatani Yuto. Concern rises among those who understand how unstable the situation remains. Akane reflects quietly on Nakatani's absence while uncertainty lingers. Doubt surfaces about whether he will return safely. Determination replaces hesitation as a decision is made to visit Nakatani's territory. Curiosity and worry drive the choice forward. Across the ruined streets, two figures walk together under watchful eyes. Temporary calm settles over the recovering city. Yuto observes children and beastmen cooperating in reconstruction efforts. Satisfaction grows as harmony begins forming within the foundations of his emerging nation. Amid the ruins, Yuto outlines his goal of creating a place where everyone can live peacefully. Workers continue rebuilding as he speaks. Melia asks about the kind of life he once had in his original world. Reflection crosses his face as he considers how knowledge from there might help. Attention turns to magical tools commonly used in this land. Arrangements are made so even ordinary people can contribute with skills and magic. Children demonstrate tools that allow them to carry heavy logs. Practical systems reduce the burden of physical strength. Watching the progress, Yuto realizes individual power matters less when cooperation and structure support the entire community. Yuto recalls how tools in his original world allowed ordinary people to achieve remarkable results. He considers whether similar methods could be used here. Melia questions if other heroes rely on crafted devices. Doubt arises about whether they would abandon personal glory for practicality. The idea emerges that tools reduce the value of individual uniqueness. Even so, Melia admits developing them would require time and effort. Yuto shifts focus toward daily life improvements rather than warfare. Simple inventions could ease burdens normally handled through magic alone. He imagines machines that operate automatically, replacing manual labor. Surprise spreads at the possibility of creating such conveniences in this world. While discussing the costs of materials and magic stones, Yuto is alerted to an approaching presence. Attention shifts as guards notice unfamiliar figures entering the ruined district. Yuto's expression hardens as the visitor draws closer. The tense atmosphere reveals that this arrival carries political weight. From atop the rubble, the elderly envoy studies Yuto carefully. Suspicion hangs between them as identities remain unconfirmed. The man formally identifies himself as Valet Samatil, Foreign Minister of the Holy Empire Valencia. His status signals official intent standing before Yuto and his allies. Valet declares his purpose clearly. He has come to negotiate on behalf of the Empire. Across the ruined city square, Yuto faces Valet, as both sides prepare to state their negotiation terms. Yuto stands before the Empire's representatives as armored soldiers surround the area. Nobles observe him cautiously while tension fills the ruined courtyard. Nearby, two demon siblings cling to each other, fearing rejection. The younger insists they speak truthfully. Yuto watches them silently, assessing their sincerity while sensing their unease. An elderly official studies Yuto carefully and invites him to present his position. Silence spreads among the guards as judgment approaches. Inside a wooden hall, news spreads that hero Onizuka has become a stray hero. Yuto prepares to reveal critical information. Confused by the situation, he listens as the elder begins a careful explanation, step by step. Yuto listens as the elder finishes his explanation. A cup strikes the table, marking a pause. The room remains tense while officials observe him closely. Discussion shifts toward Onizuka and the other summoned heroes. The elder confirms Sir Roy is pursuing them, citing his exceptional talent and loyalty to the Empire. Guards remain stationed behind him as witnesses. A silver-haired woman steps forward, warning Yuto not to worry about tracking the heroes. Her calm tone suggests preparation. The elder admits that even knowing their location offers no guarantee of victory. Agreement spreads quietly through the chamber as the difficulty becomes clear. With tension settled, the group states their true purpose for gathering there that day. Yuto asks whether cooperation comes with proper rewards. The elder confirms compensation. A silver-haired woman suspects a trap, yet Yuto accepts the proposal to confront Onizuka. Terms are discussed carefully. A temporary ceasefire is proposed until Onizuka is captured or defeated, since direct action remains impossible. The elder requests Yuto's conditions. After thinking briefly, Yuto offers limited support. The demon siblings vow silence about the meeting. Observers recognize the importance of secrecy. The elder warns that success is uncertain. Doubt remains within the room. Seeing shortages in the settlement, Yuto demands supplies arranged first. Yuto hesitates at the scale of support offered. The elder assures him funding will not be an issue, considering their objective. A young woman declares they stand at the Empire's end. The elder stresses that failure would mean its collapse, though he doubts Yuto fully grasps the weight. She challenges his resolve, urging immediate action if he is serious. Her steady gaze questions his conviction. Reports reveal 7 heroes vanished under Onizuka's influence. The warning implies Yuto understands the consequences better than anyone present. Uncertain and inexperienced with life or death decisions, Yuto lowers his eyes while she quietly awaits his answer. Yuto admits he cannot reveal his true power yet. The elder explains the Empire's war strength is scattered while heroes struggle under heavy pressure. Calmly, the elder suggests revenge should wait, though he warns Yuto will not remain uninvolved. Citizens gather outside anxious about looming conflict. Yuto accepts the situation. The elder states the key factor behind everything is Yuto himself, removing any need for formal agreements. Attention shifts to Melia's demon lineage. The elder reveals he realized the truth earlier during a quiet moment. With tension lingering, the meeting continues as deeper strategies form around Yuto's hidden potential. A refined man calmly displays magic, scattering papers and summoning birds across the room. Yuto tenses at the sudden show of power while the others watch carefully. The man reveals he is an elf and assures them his kind still lives. Yuto reacts with surprise at the unexpected confession. He explains that elves possess long lifespans, surviving centuries without aging. It becomes clear that an elf serves as a minister within the human empire. Questions arise about how long he has blended in unnoticed. The elf admits he altered his appearance for convenience, suggesting events might have unfolded more smoothly otherwise. Yuto examines a magically shaped plant placed before him, noting its crude structure. The elf observes his reaction calmly, while others wait for his response. Shifting the discussion, the elf summons written agreements through magic and emphasizes formal contracts. Imperial soldiers move through crowded streets as civilians gather anxiously. Rumors spread quickly among the people while patrols tighten security around the city center. Attention shifts to a public platform where officials address the restless crowd. Flags bearing the Empire's crest rise above the square, reinforcing authority. Among the heroes, tension grows. Whispers circulate about several missing girls, causing unease within the ranks. It becomes known that those girls were once connected to Mizumoto. Their sudden disappearance damages his reputation and deepens suspicion. Watching from a distance, Mizumoto hardens his expression as 2 silent girls stand nearby, aware of the shifting atmosphere. Yuto arrives near the capital, as soldiers guard the gates and a massive fortress looms beyond the walls. He surveys the city in silence. Inside a ruined district, villagers gather cautiously around him. Children and beastfolk watch with guarded hope while he steps forward to face them. Expressions soften as trust begins to form. Companions beside Yuto acknowledge the unexpected support rising from the crowd. He recognizes that their numbers have grown. The shifting situation surprises even him, yet he remains composed. Thoughts turn to promises of resources and financial backing, understanding that securing allies within the Empire's core will be crucial. Yuto listens as his allies remind him that greater matters demand attention. He quietly agrees, shifting focus from immediate concerns toward broader responsibilities. Discussion turns to Onizuka and the remaining heroes. Yuto stands apart, contemplating their next move while tension lingers across the open ruins. Unexpected figures approach across the empty ground. Yuto stiffens in shock as familiar faces come into view. Recognition spreads among the group. The newcomers confidently present themselves, closing the distance between past and present alliances. At last, Yuto faces Menace directly. Time apart becomes evident, as both struggle to steady their emotions in the quiet aftermath. Yuto questions the sudden appearance of the 3 girls. They approach casually, acting as if nothing is unusual, while the others observe the tense reunion. Without warning, one of them rushes forward and clings to him. The playful act contrasts sharply with the serious atmosphere surrounding the group. Amused expressions spread across their faces. Yuto realizes reasoning with them will not be simple. They dismiss concerns about their presence and treat the encounter lightly. Yuto remains cautious, uncertain of their intentions. As confusion deepens, he notices unusual awareness in their responses, raising suspicion that his thoughts are no longer private. One of the girls steps forward and claims she understands Yuto better now. She hints at revealing something important about another companion, drawing his guarded attention. The group gathers inside a building, while a small demon girl clings to Yuto. Focus shifts as the discussion moves towards specific conditions. A brown-haired girl nervously thanks Yuto for saving her. Emotion surfaces as she admits she never had the chance to say it before. She recalls being mentally overwhelmed and near death at that time. Yuto listens quietly, acknowledging her suffering. Concern turns to his injuries, and relief spreads when he assures everyone he has recovered. Yuto acknowledges there is more to discuss and hints at another task waiting. The girls sense his distance as he prepares to leave again. Concern rises when one asks if he will return. Yuto offers no clear promise, maintaining a guarded stance. An elf quietly admits she would rather remain by his side despite the burden. The small demon girl continues clinging to him. A brown-haired girl breaks down, confessing she cannot go back. Yuto listens and accepts her feelings without hesitation. Instead of rejecting them, he considers when they will truly be ready to accept everyone together. Yuto is confronted about his larger ambitions, including building a nation and guiding people. The girl questions whether that future is what he truly prepares for. Attention shifts to his unusual eye. She presses him on how far his vision reaches, sensing hidden depth behind it. Stepping forward, she declares she will explain the true nature of her own eye first. Yuto listens cautiously as new terms are introduced. A silver-haired girl rests on wooden steps, calmly revealing that her ability allows her to see through all things. Yuto watches her carefully, sensing unusual confidence behind her relaxed posture. Inside the cabin, she explains that her skill, insight, lets her perceive thoughts if she chooses to focus. The others remain cautious, while Yuto studies her expression. Suspicion lingers among the group, yet she proves she can also perceive Yuto's curse skill. Her demonstration eases some tension. Although impressive, the ability requires careful use and intention. Trust slowly begins forming. Limits exist because she must decide what to know. Yuto understands her power is precise, not absolute. Yuto considers breaking the seal placed upon him and states, he will learn the method from the Empire. The silver-haired girl studies him, suspecting he might attempt to use absorption on her. A quiet smile spreads across her face as she observes his eyes. Curiosity rises about how deeply his perception can reach. Confusion appears among the others when Yuto clarifies the nature of his ability. Tension fills the room as misunderstandings surface. He reveals that absorption allows him to temporarily steal another person's skill. Realization dawns on the girl. Memory connects past events to his power. Yuto understands that someone's healing may have weakened because of him. Yuto points out that the distant girl's ability has been sealed. The silver-haired woman remarks that his absorption skill is dangerous, despite its usefulness. Confirmation follows as the group explains their intention to help the sealed girl recover her lost power. Uncertainty spreads, yet some decide to support this path. The silver-haired woman casually suggests staying with their side to gain advantages. She admits her own skill is practical but unsuitable for combat. Yuto questions whether she truly intends to accompany them. Confidence shows in her posture as she declares she will remain where safety is greatest, standing close to Yuto. Yuto quietly reflects on his own nature. While the others watch his expression, doubt and resolve mix within him as he considers the path ahead. A decision forms as he announces he will gather information before returning with firm determination. The group listens in uneasy silence. Brief farewells are exchanged through gestures and glances. Yuto stands close to Akane, signaling that the discussion has ended. Outside the town, companions wave as he departs with another ally. Distance grows between the two sides. Along the forest path, concern surfaces when Akane senses something unusual. Yuto notices her tension and prepares for what may follow. Using insight, the silver-haired girl realizes the opposing group were complete monsters. Yuto stands calmly, understanding how dangerous the situation had been even without open conflict. Relief spreads among them as they move away from the encounter. Akane questions the risk, yet survival itself feels like proof of narrow escape. Discussion returns to the sealed power and the gamble placed on breaking it. Yuto remains firm about learning the method from the Empire. Concern grows over their worth if the plan fails. Doubt lingers in the quiet forest. Facing reality, they accept how fragile their position is in this world. A long-haired man violently strikes down another summoned student, discarding him without hesitation. Contempt fills his expression as he dismisses the fallen as worthless. Bodies lie scattered across the forest clearing while he curses the weak. Several companions watch from a rock. Discussion rises among them about surviving by robbing others daily. Doubt appears, yet fear keeps them aligned with the ruthless leader. He convinces himself this world feels like a dream where consequences hold no meaning. Resentment toward Yuto fuels his anger. Another victim trembles as the group debates their future. Pursuit and desperation leave them uncertain about what path remains. The long-haired leader declares that summoned heroes can steal the powers of those they kill. His companions hesitate, yet the logic of survival in this world weighs heavily on them. Greed and fear mix as he argues such ability should never be wasted. Temptation spreads among the group despite lingering uncertainty. Attention shifts to the Empire and its pursuing heroes. Realization grows that they are already being hunted. Frustration erupts as he insists strength is the only path to freedom. Weakness, in his view, guarantees control by others. Elsewhere, Yuto and opposing heroes stand prepared. Conflict becomes inevitable as both sides move toward confrontation, determined to grow stronger. The cloaked figures walk across fallen bodies, leaving the battlefield behind without regret. A distant fortress rises beyond the trees, marking the Empire's territory. Yuto approaches cautiously, aware that entering this land will test his resolve. Within the settlement, armed figures and travelers move through guarded streets. Yuto observes quietly while his companion follows close behind. Standing alone in the open square, he studies the town's structure and the people walking past. Suspicion lingers in his thoughts. Surprise crosses his face as he notices how carefully humans must be watched. Carelessness here could expose weakness. Nearby, a disguised figure warns that certain appearances draw attention. Yuto understands that blending in is essential before making his next move. Reconstruction advances steadily as the beast-eared girl notes the town's rapid progress. Yuto listens while considering how stability strengthens their position. Reports confirm more supplies arrived, helping the castle town develop further. Quiet discussions hint that greater efforts remain necessary. Attention shifts toward the planned subjugation of Hiro Onizuka. Yuto realizes the Empire's heroes will soon begin moving. Observation suggests Onizuka's strength has grown enough to mobilize multiple heroes. Concern spreads as competition appears impossible. From a distance, a watchful figure evaluates the town and its defenders, forming a measured opinion about the coming conflict. An elderly hero warns Yuto that confronting Onizuka may require caution. Dust swirls as tension fills the space between opposing forces. Yuto listens calmly while the strongest hero is said to possibly struggle against such an opponent. Concern quietly spreads among those present elsewhere. Onizuka's followers complain about constant movement and his increasing physical strength. Resentment grows as exhaustion sets in. Orders are given to prepare for the next stop without delay. Frustration shows on weary faces. Suddenly, Onizuka attacks a nearby creature, displaying ruthless confidence. Fear and admiration mix among his companions. Onizuka and his group arrive before a fortified structure hidden within the forest. Unease spreads as they question its purpose. Moments later, large numbers of armed men rush out from the entrance. Realization strikes that they have walked into a trap. Encircled by enemies, the group faces open hostility without hesitation. Escape routes quickly disappear. Onizuka steps forward confidently, gripping his weapon while dismissing their threats. His followers tense behind him. Cruel smiles spread among the opposing men as they mock past mercy. Violence becomes unavoidable. As enemies close in, sudden attacks strike from behind, crushing skulls instantly. Shock spreads through the ambushers as confusion erupts. Onizuka launches forward without hesitation, smashing through multiple opponents. Bodies scatter under his overwhelming force. Panic rises among the remaining men as orders are shouted too late. Resistance collapses beneath his assault. Standing over the fallen, he challenges anyone still able to fight. Fear replaces earlier arrogance, with the entrance cleared. Onizuka declares the structure their new stronghold. His followers watch, stunned by his dominance. Onizuka and his followers move through a stone corridor inside the captured structure. Strange sounds echo ahead, drawing their attention deeper underground. Sudden impacts strike from hidden openings, but Onizuka dismisses the attackers as insignificant. He advances while his companions remain alert behind him. More enemies drop from above, only to be crushed without slowing his pace. Confidence grows as resistance proves weak. The passage opens into a cavern-like chamber with a large sealed entrance. Onizuka recognizes it as the true objective. Beyond the doorway, a goblin leader confronts them, angered by the disturbance outside. A new battle begins within the stronghold. Inside the cavern, the goblin leader blocks the path and declares they will not leave alive. Onizuka observes calmly while his followers tense. Without hesitation, the goblin chief lunges forward in a brutal charge. The clash shakes the chamber. Cornered civilians are dragged forward as threats escalate. Fear spreads among the weaker goblins. Onizuka cuts down the chief in a single decisive strike. Blood splashes across the stone as control of the chamber shifts instantly. A crowded city prepares for a grand parade as banners hang across buildings and citizens gather along the main street. Inside the residence, several summoned youths stand near the entrance while a young knight adjusts his stance. Above, two figures lean over the railing, silently studying the organized procession beneath them. Meanwhile, a small group walks through the busy streets among merchants and performers. Although officially confined to the royal palace, she has obtained permission to shop within the city. Companions follow closely, aware they are excluded from the parade. As they move forward, her thoughts turn serious, understanding her current responsibilities, despite lingering unease. Summoned youths gather within the palace corridor while the castle towers over the city, reinforcing the authority that controls their fate. Inside, a vast chamber, a long table sits beneath towering pillars as officials and heroes assemble to hear the formal address. A young knight studies the leaders, sensing another public obligation approaching, while unease spreads quietly among the summoned group. The Prime Minister declares their previous ceremonial role complete and orders them to actively display their powers before the Empire. Beyond the palace walls, the expansive nation under regional lords awaits this demonstration to strengthen unity and reaffirm imperial dominance. Beyond imperial borders lies the Great Dingirth Forest, a vast region outside control, where a hidden settlement stands surrounded by mountains and dense wilderness. During the council, officials explain that rogue forces within that forest disrupt trade and movement between territories, creating instability the Empire refuses to tolerate. Yuto listens carefully. A direct question rises across the chamber about extermination, and confirmation follows without hesitation. Yuto accepts the implication with a restrained expression. However, new intelligence reveals that a large opposing faction has already been annihilated. Suddenly, a black-haired young man named Yuto steps forward, announcing himself as Jiggy Vlad, signaling unexpected involvement. A black-haired man with a concealed eye studies the heroes from across the chamber, his faint smile reflecting confidence as tension quietly spreads among those present. Seated figures remain cautious while he maintains a relaxed posture, appearing unfazed by suspicion. Subtle irritation shows from one knight observing him closely. He remarks calmly about being accustomed to distrust, showing no discomfort under scrutiny. Leaning back, he reveals that the current assignment involves handling a stray hero considered weak by others. Attention shifts sharply toward the implication. News follows that another hero has already eliminated a hostile faction, easing official concerns while the black-haired man reacts with quiet amusement. Reports reveal that the bandit faction has reorganized under Hero Onizuka, who now leads a growing hostile force beyond imperial control. Estimates show their combined numbers exceed 1,000 across multiple regions, transforming unrest into a full-scale war rather than preparation. Tension spreads among the summoned heroes. The black-haired man rests his hand on the table, calmly preparing to deliver the final decision to the chamber. He announces that every hero present will be deployed to fight in the coming war, leaving no room for refusal. Imperial forces alongside his Black Wolf army will lead the assault as the vast hall falls into heavy silence. The black-haired commander asserts confidently that their combined strength is sufficient to defeat Onizuka's faction without hesitation or doubt. Across the table, a knight questions the practical benefit behind such motivation, suggesting the heroes gain nothing from this conflict. With a composed smile, the commander defers explanation to the Prime Minister, who calmly reveals that the Salisford family has been destroyed. He reminds the chamber that the Empire's vast structure depends on regional lords, implying instability if a vacant seat remains unfilled. Finally, the Prime Minister proposes that one capable hero should inherit the lost position, presenting it as both reward and responsibility. The Prime Minister declares that one hero will be granted noble status within the Empire of Valencia as a reward. Shock spreads across the chamber. Clarification follows that this title will be awarded to whoever defeats Onizuka, turning the mission into a competition for power. Confirmation echoes through the hall, making the offer official and binding for all summoned heroes present. Reactions divide the group as some hesitate at fighting Onizuka, while others show anger and ambition rising together. Amid the tension, a determined voice accepts the challenge, declaring the intention to kill and claim nobility without regret. She questions the brutal reality emerging before them, realizing their world now demands ruthless decisions and sacrifice. A girl quietly eats while classmates discuss ambitions of becoming nobles, her name mentioned as a possible target in their plans. Across the hall, armored students speculate about her motives, recalling her close friendship with Yukari and questioning her sudden interest in status. Memories surface of shared promises and simple games they once played, created to ease boredom during difficult days. Training resumes as she admits her abilities remain incomplete, yet she still desires recognition through effort. Determination hardens within the group, leading them into serious combat practice to change their future. Several students sit apart in silence, exhaustion, and doubt weighing on them after relentless training. Elsewhere, two older men stand near the corridor, one smoking casually, while the other remains strict and observant. From a distance, the smoker watches the students with narrowed eyes, measuring their potential with quiet amusement. Near the archway, certain elites dismiss the struggling group, believing effort alone cannot rival true talent. Meanwhile, others observe from hidden corners, realizing the growing tension between natural ability and desperate ambition. Yuto studies the damaged city while questioning the true nature of the twins' abilities, realizing he still lacks clear understanding of their power. Moments later, the twin girls cling to him closely, responding only to his intent as a white-haired observer silently evaluates the situation. Sudden movement reveals their overwhelming speed, proving their strength comes from natural physical talent, rather than any formalized skill system. Caution spreads when the observer considers how Yuto's absorption might react to an ability that does not function like others together. The twins demonstrate their shared senses, activating their true strength only when united as one. An elf woman observes Yuto and the twins, considering whether their shared ability should remain exclusive to them, while others watch cautiously. Tension rises as the twins display fierce expressions, gripping each other amid growing concern that the situation may escalate further. Gray calmly raises his darkened hand, stating his skill should prove more practical, while drawing attention from the surrounding group. Without warning, he launches forward, his cloak cutting through the air as Yuto braces himself against the sudden assault. Yuto counters by activating Fang Fist, reinforcing his strike with Beast. Like power as a violent shockwave spreads outward. The group discusses Yuto's growing abilities, confirming that combining techniques can further increase his overall combat power. An elf explains that adding Fang Fist enhances whichever skill Yuto activates, drawing attention to the vast number of abilities he already possesses. Gray watches closely while Yuto considers the advice, recognizing the practical value of reinforcing his techniques. Resolute, Yuto steps forward and triggers absorption, pressing his hand against Gray as energy surges between them. Power settles within him as the transfer completes, leaving Yuto calm and more certain of his expanding strength. Yuto analyzes Fang Fist further, realizing its offensive traits can shift forms and adapt to multiple combat situations. Testing continues, as they confirm the fangs can extend healing range or transform divine power into long-distance attacks. Discussion turns strategic, noting that enhanced versatility will also refine dragon techniques and other stored abilities within him, despite progress. Yuto questions why such combinations were not attempted earlier, sensing overlooked potential. In response, the twins affirm their loyalty to strength, choosing to remain at Yuto's side as his power steadily evolves. An elf woman explains that many would cooperate with Yuto despite differences in values, believing alliances can form beyond shared ideals. Yuto listens beside his quiet companion, considering the responsibility that comes with gathering followers under his growing strength. Night settles over the ruined city as doubt crosses his mind, yet reassurance from those beside him steadies his resolve. Elsewhere, concern arises for Onizuka when companions approach him cautiously, sensing something unsettling nearby. The scene shifts to a forest filled with fallen bodies, revealing the grim aftermath of violence and silencing any illusion of peace. Amid gathered soldiers and monsters, a determined leader urges preparation, pushing the uneasy group toward imminent battle and strength. A squad advances across the rocky field, while a lone figure stands ahead. Dust rises under their boots as tension spreads through the formation. Yuto observes the approaching unit from a distance, recognizing the military authority behind the movement. Orders are issued to turn the convoy and prepare for engagement. Calm expressions mask deeper intentions as strategies are discussed. Yuto remains composed, analyzing the situation while others question the sudden change in direction. A cloaked leader steps forward, revealing control over the operation. The purpose of the maneuver becomes clear as preparations for confrontation solidify. Standing beside his allies, Yuto acknowledges the Black Wolf Army's value. The group positions itself carefully. Yuto listens as the black-haired strategist confidently assesses the battlefield. The heroes are considered unstable, and their internal conflict is expected to weaken them without outside interference. A sharp grin spreads across the strategist's face while he explains that even delay would not change the outcome. The black-haired man reclines casually on the ledge as Yuto approaches from behind. Below them, cloaked subordinates stand by, awaiting the next directive. Across the barren field, mounted forces advance in formation. Yuto turns toward the approaching group, recognizing the Empire's elite unit moving with purpose. Discussion shifts to Minister Roy, whose authority commands the Empire's military. Yuto stands beside the black-haired strategist, who claims the strongest force will arrive later. Their plan depends on timing, rather than immediate confrontation. Confidence shapes the decision to wait. The heroes they deployed are capable, and delaying action may allow rivals to weaken each other first. Doubt flickers briefly as unexpected outcomes are considered. Yuto quietly evaluates risks that could disrupt their calculated expectations. Attention shifts to Onizuka, whose overwhelming strength exceeds that of ordinary heroes. His presence alone could overturn any careless strategy. Beyond the rocky cliffs, a mountain fortress looms in silence, holding the next stage of conflict within its guarded walls. Inside the fortress, captives are escorted down a corridor under guard. Armed soldiers watch as the group is led toward a chamber deeper within the structure. At the hall's center, a long-haired overseer greets the newcomer. The boy steps forward while others remain behind, observing the exchange in silence. The overseer studies him closely, questioning his worth. Without warning, an attack strikes his shoulder. Blood spills as he stares in shock, unable to react to the sudden violence. Dismissed as insignificant, his skill is deemed worthless. A small flame flickers in his trembling hand, proving it offers little protection in this ruthless place. A captive releases a concentrated surge of magic, forming a swirling blast within the hall. The sudden power forces nearby guards to recoil in alarm. The long-haired overseer watches with irritation, judging the attack insufficient. He prepares to escalate the situation, dissatisfied with such limited ability. Frustration spreads as he declares the captives worthless. Turning away, he leaves the remaining handling to his subordinates inside the vast chamber. Orders are given without hesitation, granting permission to dispose of them. Whispers about Onizuka's severity circulate among the survivors. Faced with shrinking options, they realize escape or submission are their only remaining paths. Within the columned hall, two captives argue in hushed tones. One insists that the chosen heroes remain untouchable, while the other questions why the useless were spared. Down the dim corridor, a lone figure walks away, as tension lingers. Doubt grows over Onizuka's judgment, and whether his strength alone is truly sufficient. They begin reconsidering their position, realizing the Empire could strike at any moment. Suspicion sharpens into a dangerous idea. Perhaps the leftovers were deliberately entrusted to them because they were deemed weak. Shock flashes across the companion's face as the implication settles in. Silence follows, heavy with the risk of defiance. In the shadowed corridor, a trembling captive steps forward and volunteers to act. Fear is visible in his eyes, yet desperation drives his decision. He explains that survival has always required compromise. Retreat was never an option, and refusing now would only hasten their deaths. Another captive reflects bitterly on their classmates, admitting he would never feel safe beside them again, even if they returned home. Resolve replaces hesitation as a blade is drawn. The choice to act is made, no longer clouded by doubt. Outside, mounted forces surge across the plains, signaling that greater conflict is already closing in. Riders charge across the wasteland as a white-haired commander urges full speed toward the approaching battlefield. Inside a valley of towering crystals, a unit advances under orders to execute former classmates, now labeled as bandits. The mission allows no hesitation despite shared origins. Meanwhile, a knight struggles with his duty as a hero. Commitment to justice hardens his resolve, even knowing his choice will oppose someone once trusted. Soon after, two fighters charge across the open ground. Witnesses remain tense, understanding the outcome will shift alliances. At the rear, soldiers march while two women lead confidently toward conflict. Elsewhere, quiet manipulation begins, setting betrayal into motion. Scouts report the enemy force far exceeds expectations, spreading across the Crystal Valley in overwhelming numbers. From the fortress walls carved into stone, countless figures appear, filling balconies and gates. The scale of opposition becomes undeniable, forcing the advance unit to halt. Whispers of confusion ripple among allied soldiers as they question the promised reinforcements. Doubt grows when it becomes clear they are not the only army present. Suddenly, warriors surge forward, blades drawn, committing to battle despite uncertainty. The clash begins within the narrow canyon. Amid the tension, hesitation surfaces over charging alone, yet the march toward confrontation continues. Hiro Miyamoto rides forward, rallying the troops to follow his lead into the Crystal Pass. Confidence spreads as armored riders tighten formation and prepare to strike. Deep within the canyon, a massive creature and fortified structure emerge ahead. The unexpected sight halts observers, signaling the enemy's hidden strength. Away from the battlefield, Yuto entrusts responsibility to an older man in a quiet town. The decision marks a shift in priorities. Walking through empty streets, Yuto accepts limited choices and moves toward his objective. Determination replaces hesitation. Children gather around the elder, trusting his protection as larger events unfold beyond the village. Yuto reassures Gray before departing, leaving the children and village under his protection. Trust settles between them, as responsibilities are quietly exchanged. Later, Yuto speaks with Melia to confirm the appointed time set by Valet. Although the plan seems clear, Tension lingers beneath his calm expression. An uneasy feeling grows within him as he walks away from the trees. Instinct warns that something about the arrangement is wrong. Suddenly, attackers rush from multiple directions, blades drawn and faces twisted with intent. The ambush unfolds without warning. In response, Yuto moves instantly, cutting through the assault and driving the enemies back. After repelling the ambush, Yuto advances toward a stone structure where surviving attackers retreat inside. Bodies lie scattered as he steps through the entrance without slowing. Within the dim hall supported by tall pillars, several figures regroup near a sealed gate. Miyamoto and his companions push deeper into the chamber, wary of the unexpected confrontation. Confusion spreads as they recognize familiar faces among those present. Heavy footsteps echo across the chamber, drawing attention toward the source of the disturbance. Tension sharpens as identities become clear. A hostile trio stands revealed, confirming that former allies have aligned against them. The conflict shifts into open betrayal. Inside the chamber, Miyamoto confronts Onizuka as tension erupts. Onizuka steps forward calmly, declaring that the awaited moment has arrived. Accusations follow regarding the deaths of Suzuki and Dujima. Shock spreads across the hall as the fallen bodies lie near the doorway, without remorse. Onizuka dismisses the deaths as meaningless, claiming weakness justified their fate. His cold reasoning deepens the divide. Memories surface of earlier schemes involving forged cards and profit. Greed and manipulation reveal motives hidden beneath cooperation. The truth exposes jealousy over abilities and ambition for dominance, confirming betrayal rooted in envy rather than necessity. In earlier days, the group gathered around scattered cards, experimenting with small ideas to lift morale. Laughter followed as Yagami discovered ways his skill could support simple entertainment. After Baba's death, grief weighed heavily on them, yet they forced themselves to continue meeting. Gradually, Yagami began shaping broader plans, considering how their knowledge from another world might offer advantage. Attention shifted from comfort to opportunity. Soon, suggestions expanded beyond cards toward strategy games unfamiliar to this world. Excitement replaced hesitation as profit, and influence seemed possible. Confidence grew when calculations and coordination promised structured success, binding their ambitions together. In the past, Yagami and his companions dreamed of wealth, joking about fortunes earned through their inventions. Ambition united them with promises of success in this unfamiliar world. Back in the chamber, Miyamoto rejects the senseless killings, unable to accept the loss of classmates. Grief and anger drive him forward. Onizuka counters by declaring his vow to become rich and make their creations famous. He lunges with reckless determination, clinging to his pledge. The woman before him remains unmoved, dismissing his resolve without hesitation. His attack collapses against her overwhelming strength. From above, Yagami's fall shocks the others, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Onizuka crushes Yagami beneath his boot, declaring weakness worthless, and proving dominance within their brutal world. Within the grand hall, a boy lies collapsed while his classmates watch from afar. Unease fills the space as they judge him in silence. A long-haired student steps forward, examining the fallen figure. Understanding his weakness, he prepares to eliminate him without delay. The injured boy attempts to stand, panic rising. Confidence spreads across the attacker's face as he senses control over the situation. Power erupts from the long-haired student as he charges. A violent shockwave races across the floor toward the others. Before impact, a girl blocks his path with fierce determination. She denounces him, and their confrontation explodes into battle. The girl crashes through the floor as the long-haired attacker drives her back. Debris scatters across the hall while he mocks her background and status, spreading his arms. He dismisses wealth and privilege as meaningless in this world. Strength alone decides survival, and he prepares another strike. A massive impact shatters the wall, sending rubble flying toward the watching students. The hall trembles under the force of their clash. Kneeling amid broken stone, the girl struggles yet refuses to yield. Nearby classmates protest, defending Yukari's character and denying the accusation. Rising with fierce resolve, she declares Yukari's true strength. Her conviction reignites the fight as she faces the attacker once more. The long-haired attacker lunges again, swinging his arm with overwhelming force. He shows no remorse, claiming Yukari's death meant nothing to him. A sharp grin forms across his face as he locks onto his target. Malice drives his movement while the girl braces herself. His strike sends her body flying across the hall. She crashes near the distant wall as dust and fragments scatter. Turning toward the remaining students, he signals them forward. Fear spreads among them as he demands they face him. Several classmates charge together, weapons drawn. Their coordinated assault collides against him, igniting another violent clash. Two classmates step forward together, confronting the raging attacker. Confusion crosses their faces as they question why the violence continues. Despite hesitation, they charge with determined expressions. One insists there is no other choice, even as doubt flashes in his eyes. Their combined assault strikes the ground with explosive force. Stone shatters outward, while the attacker withstands the impact. Observers watch in disbelief as the clash intensifies. Names are called out in shock when the pair reveal unexpected strength. In a swift counter, the girl pins one opponent down with her blade. Calmly, she measures his power and judges it insufficient. Blades clash again as the two fighters rush across the shattered hall. One acknowledges there is no path left except forward. Breathing heavily, they accept that retreat is impossible. A quiet realization settles that their fate was decided long ago. A distant memory surfaces from their original world, where everything once felt ordinary and insignificant. Back then, they were careless students who avoided responsibility. They chased easy money and ignored consequences. Secret photos were sold for profit without guilt. That selfish choice now returns, shaping the brutal conflict before them. In their former world, two boys stood accused of cruelty. They remembered how they fell under Onizuka's influence and chose profit over decency. Now, amid the battlefield, one accepts that this ruin is karma. Escape is impossible, and he resolves to face the consequences directly. The long-haired attacker closes in with brutal force. A heavy punch lands, crushing resistance and driving his opponent backward. A scream echoes across the hall as classmates witness the savage blow. Fear spreads, while the fight spirals further out of control. Another student is seized and violently struck down. The attacker shows no mercy as the chaos deepens. As chaos spreads, a white-haired knight steps forward, recognizing the need to intervene. His gaze fixes on the long-haired attacker while others continue clashing behind him. Across the hall, the knight warns that a boundary has been crossed. The wounded girl kneels nearby as tension tightens between both sides. Positioning himself between allies and enemy, the knight offers a final chance to reconsider. Doubt flickers among the watching students. Rules. He stands firm, unshaken by the threat. Drawing his blade, the knight lowers his stance and prepares to strike. The confrontation shifts toward a decisive duel. The white-haired knight braces as a violent strike crashes against his blade. Moments later, the long-haired attacker stands confident before him. He asserts dominance through sheer power, leaving the wounded knight struggling to remain standing. Onizuka lashes out at Miyamoto, rejecting his accusations and charging forward with violent intent inside the shattered hall. A massive impact follows as their clash sends debris across the chamber, forcing the others to shield themselves from the shock. Recovering quickly, the woman counters and drives Onizuka back, exposing the gap in his strength and shaking his confidence. She presses him further, overwhelming his guard and pushing him toward collapse despite his desperate resistance. Behind them, Miyamoto calls for support, but hesitation spreads among the group as the battle tilts decisively. Onizuka reacts in shock as the situation turns against him. Realizing support will not come as expected, fear begins to replace his earlier confidence. Across the vast chamber, the others remain distant and motionless, offering no aid while he struggles to regain control of the fight. The woman restrains him and exposes the truth behind his former influence, revealing that usefulness, not respect, secured his position among others. She reminds him that past achievements in another world no longer guarantee value here. Strength alone determines survival within this realm. With a decisive strike, she hurls him aside, reducing his pride and leaving him broken before everyone watching. Miyamoto struggles to stand while the woman reminds him that his status holds no value here. Realization begins to break his remaining pride. Without warning, she unleashes another strike that shatters the ground around him. The impact sends debris outward as he fails to defend himself. Pinned against fractured stone, he watches her approach while she questions his worth as a hero. Fear overtakes his anger. Energy gathers at her command, crushing his resistance and silencing his protests. His body hangs helpless within the collapsing crater. With a final invocation, dark spikes erupt beneath him, sealing his defeat inside a grave of stone. As dark spikes surge upward, Miyamoto screams while the ground collapses around him. Nearby classmates hesitate, uncertain whether he deserves rescue. The woman laughs at their doubt, amused by their attachment to someone already defeated. At that moment, Yuto steps forward into the chamber. With a swift motion, Yuto summons black spikes that erupt beneath two enemies, pinning them before they can react. Shock spreads across the room as several students stumble back, realizing the balance of power has shifted again. Standing calmly among them, Yuto finally understands the cruelty governing this world and accepts what must be done. Yuto faces the woman across the shattered chamber, while trapped classmates remain sealed within stone behind her. The distance between them grows tense and silent. She declares her intent to kill him without hesitation. Yuto stands firm, shield raised, refusing to retreat despite the threat. Around them lie fallen bodies and broken ground, proof of the battle's cost. Blood and debris mark the consequences of earlier choices. The woman questions whether death might free her from this world, treating the conflict as something unreal. Yuto watches carefully, assessing her instability. Calmly, he challenges her belief, forcing her to confront the reality of their situation. The woman declares the conflict will end now, and advances decisively across the fractured ground. Yuto remains still beside his allies, waiting. She launches forward with violent momentum, wings of force spreading behind her as she commits to a final strike. Yuto lowers his stance and quietly raises his hand, preparing a counter instead of retreating. Her attack collides with an unseen barrier, dispersing upon contact as shock spreads across her face and the watching classmates. Standing unharmed, Yuto studies the strange pain affecting her, realizing the battle has shifted completely in his favor. Wounded and furious, the woman rejects the outcome, insisting this world must be a nightmare she can escape. Blood spills as her denial intensifies. Her scream echoes through the chamber, drawing uneasy stares from the remaining students. Yuto watches silently, sensing another change. Suddenly, grotesque creatures emerge from the darkness behind her, their forms twisted and unstable. The atmosphere shifts from duel to chaos. The monsters surge forward and seize a nearby boy before anyone can react. Panic spreads as he is dragged down. Within moments, the creatures merge violently, leaving the others stunned at the horrifying transformation. The fused creature expands beside the woman, its distorted faces twisting as it stabilizes into a single mass. She stares at it in disbelief. Yuto and the others watch as the monster thrashes violently, scattering debris across the chamber floor. The woman begins to laugh, despite her injuries. The grotesque body shifts again, revealing her partially merged within it. Expression warped and unstable. Fear spreads among the remaining students. Facing Yuto once more, the transformed woman advances, driven by madness as the nightmare continues. Yuto confronts a distorted creature with warped flesh and empty eyes. Tension surrounds the battlefield as it twists its body unnaturally. He watches without retreating. Without warning, the monster lunges forward. Its jaws stretch wide as it charges. Yuto holds his position, prepared for impact. The creature crashes into the ground. Stone breaks apart, sending debris outward. Cloaked figures observe from separate positions. Fragments fall from its body. Rot spreads quickly across its unstable frame. Yuto studies the change calmly. Decay overtakes the monster completely. Its body collapses as Yuto remains standing, aware the battle is nearly finished. The creature's warped body continues deteriorating as rot spreads deeper through its flesh. Yuto stands nearby, assessing its weakening state, without moving carelessly. A hooded woman watches calmly while Yuto lowers his gaze in thought. He considers ending the fight directly, instead of waiting. Across the wide chamber, the monster struggles on the ground. Several onlookers remain at a distance, treating the situation like routine duty. Yuto turns slightly as another figure calls his name from behind. His attention shifts back toward the collapsing enemy. Without hesitation, he dashes forward. Power gathers in his hand before he strikes, driving force into the creature and forcing it back. A massive explosion erupts where Yuto struck, sending debris outward. Two armored warriors shield themselves from the blast as the chamber trembles. The creature is hurled into a cracked wall, its body embedded in stone. Nearby, several girls recoil while dust and fragments scatter across the ground. Sharp fissures split through the monster's form. Its unstable flesh tears apart under the force, unable to endure the impact. Observers stare in stunned silence as the battlefield settles. Some kneel or collapse, overwhelmed by the sudden display of strength. Yuto stands apart from the others while the broken creature convulses. Doubt spreads among the watching students as they grasp the widening gap. He raises his hand and unleashes a concentrated strike. Flames surge from his palm and slam into the creature's torso, forcing it backward. The monster crashes into the wall again. Stone bursts outward from the impact point, forming a deep crater around its body. Despite the damage, the creature roars and attempts to move. Yuto watches closely while distant students flinch at the shockwaves. Another heavy blast drives the monster further into broken stone. Rubble rains down as its body sinks deeper into the fractured surface. Dark force descends from above and pierces through the creature. Its remaining strength fades as Yuto stands firm, ensuring the battle ends decisively. Yuto activates another ability while examining his hand. Energy gathers around his fingers as he prepares to finish the fight. The creature roars in desperation, its distorted muscles swelling as it refuses to fall. Its body strains against the spreading decay. Power condenses into a swirling mass above Yuto's palm. Observers watch uneasily, sensing the rising threat from both sides. The monster lunges forward again, tearing across the ground despite its failing condition. Yuto shifts his stance and releases a dark surge. The attack collides with crushing force. Black energy slams the creature into the earth, shattering stone and ending its resistance. A towering pillar of force descends as Yuto braces beneath it. The creature's body contorts, struggling against the overwhelming pressure. Yuto lands lightly after advancing too far with his absorption. Nearby allies watch, sensing the strain building within him. The monster collapses onto the barren ground, twitching weakly. Its form appears unstable, unable to function as a proper vessel. Observers conclude the accumulated abilities inside it are being rejected. Cracks spread through its body as internal collapse begins. Yuto lowers his arm while the creature erupts from within. Distorted flesh bursts apart, unable to endure the excess power he forced into it. Then Yuto thrusts his hand forward, channeling concentrated power into the creature's skull. Energy gathers tightly at the point of contact as he commits to a decisive strike. The monster's head caves inward under the force. Stone-like flesh shatters and collapses. Yuto watches from behind as his classmates combine their skills against a raging monster. Shock spreads across their faces as the attack finally connects. The beast crashes onto the barren ground. Several students stare at the result in disbelief, while Yuto remains silent at a distance. Suddenly, dark energy gathers near him. A distorted creature forms within the swirling shadows and collapses after a brief surge. Silence covers the wasteland. Yuto stands alone beside the fallen body, questioning the meaning of the moment. Awareness sharpens within him as the illusion begins to break. Yuto steadies himself for what follows. Yuto's hand trembles as he reaches toward the fallen creature, recalling the laughter that once surrounded his weakness. Above the battlefield, he stands before his companions, yet memories of humiliation in a classroom tighten around his thoughts. Cruel words and blows echo from his past, teaching him that the powerless are forced to endure suffering without mercy. Bruised and discarded, he understood that admiration for heroes meant nothing to those crushed beneath others. Resolve hardens within him, strength alone decides survival, and he chooses never to remain among the weak again. Memories of ridicule surface as Yuto recalls trampling words and the vow he made to never return to helplessness. The beast's fading breath mirrors his past despair, yet determination replaces the fear that once consumed him. Power surges through his body as he activates absorption, drawing the creature's essence into himself and ending the struggle. After the battle, he stands near the others while restrained captives watch from afar, realizing how close they are to sharing his former fate. Tension rises among the group, aware that strength now defines their path and Yuto's resolve will not waver. Fear spreads among the group as they realize the consequences of their actions. Yuto watches quietly while guilt and panic surface around him. Accusations rise as the truth about their pursuit of power becomes unavoidable. One by one, they struggle to justify what they have done. Acceptance slowly replaces denial, and the weight of their choices settles heavily on their shoulders. Yuto remains distant, showing neither sympathy nor anger. Some attempt to withdraw from the tension, but unease lingers in the open wasteland. The divide between strength and weakness becomes clearer. From above, another presence observes the aftermath, recognizing that everything unfolded without intervention, while Yuto stands firm below. Yuto lowers his gaze as a man known as Black Wolf steps forward with a confident smile, acknowledging him with clear interest. Elsewhere, an elderly man escorts a young woman toward a hidden stairway leading beneath the imperial palace. The spiral descent stretches deep underground. Inside the dim structure, the old man releases a surge of power, striking the wall as he advances along the curved passage. Long corridors lined with mounted blades extend before him, creating a silent and controlled environment. He proceeds without hesitation. From above, observers question the woman's loyalty, while the old man reflects calmly, certain of his judgment. A young woman reveals that a hidden underground level exists beneath the palace, claiming it holds the truth about Hero Ray. The old minister listens carefully. Doubt lingers as they discuss secrets concealed even from the nobility. The woman presses him to consider what the empire is hiding. Inside, the narrow corridor lined with mounted blades, the minister advances alone, reflecting on the gravity of the revelation. Evidence of a prior visitor unsettles him, forcing him to reconsider alliances already formed within the palace. At the corridor's end, another figure waits, signaling deeper political involvement tied to foreign authority. Chancellor Dennis intercepts the elderly minister in the underground corridor, politely excusing himself while blocking further progress. The long passage grows tense as the woman stands aside. Dennis requests permission to proceed, testing the minister's resolve. Understanding the intent, the minister closes his eyes briefly, accepting that confrontation is unavoidable within the narrow hall. Suddenly, the woman strikes first, shattering the wall and forcing distance between them as debris scatters across the floor. Dennis remains composed, observing her movements and preparing to respond while the confined corridor becomes a battlefield. Sharp stone pillars rise around the fortress as soldiers restrain civilians near the gates. A stern armored commander surveys the unrest spreading through the area. The commander stands before the massive walls, aware that control is fragile and the situation could escalate without warning. From a rocky height, several summoned students observe the scene below, uncertain about intervening in the growing conflict. Across the open ground, a figure in a dark furred cloak faces them directly. The name Black Wolf echoes as recognition spreads. Tension builds among the students while the commander reacts sharply, realizing the confrontation is far from over. From the corridor entrance, a girl watches as Black Wolf approaches captured men inside the hall. The prisoners recoil, sensing his intent. A cruel grin spreads across his face as he signals others to begin. His presence alone pressures the captives into despair. Encouraged by his approval, armed followers surge forward. Chaos erupts while Yuto and a white-haired youth stand apart. Observing without interference, blows rain down across the courtyard as civilians scatter in panic. The attackers push relentlessly, turning the area into disorder. Screams echo through the grounds while violence spreads unchecked, confirming Black Wolf's control over the escalating conflict. Yuto lowers his eyes, finally understanding the fate that befell hero Onizuka and the corruption surrounding his disappearance. Across the rocky ruins, Black Wolf calls out from higher ground, drawing Yuto's attention and stepping forward with open confidence. A mocking smile forms as Black Wolf questions Yuto's growth, studying his expression and measuring the change in his presence. Smoke drifts from Black Wolf's hand while he watches closely, noting the sharpness in Yuto's gaze without hesitation. Suddenly, he lunges from the cliffside, crashing down with force, eager to test whether Yuto's power matches his resolve. Black Wolf descends with a powerful strike, but Yuto meets him head-on. Their blades collide, sending debris across the battlefield as onlookers freeze. Without hesitation, Yuto pivots and deflects the next blow. Black Wolf adjusts quickly, testing his speed and balance. Steel clashes again as Yuto drives forward, forcing his opponent back. A brief grin appears on Black Wolf's face despite the pressure. Nearby allies watch anxiously while the fighters separate. The witch lowers her gaze, sensing the shift in momentum. Both charge once more, crossing paths in a swift exchange that leaves the outcome uncertain. Black Wolf grins and presses forward, delighted by the clash. Yuto steadies himself, a faint light gathering at his chest as he prepares to counter. Their blades collide repeatedly across the open ground. Black Wolf attacks from multiple angles, forcing Yuto to guard while searching for an opening alleys. Observe from behind, tense and silent. The white-haired youth studies Yuto's movements, noting the shift in control as the exchange continues. Dark energy begins to coil around the battlefield, enclosing both fighters within a rising vortex that alters the flow of the fight. Concern spreads among the watchers as the pressure intensifies. Realizing the confrontation has entered a decisive stage, Yuto lowers his blade slightly, breathing hard, while Black Wolf taunts him from a short distance. The challenge is clear as both remain standing. Without warning, Black Wolf dashes forward, dragging his weapon across the ground and closing the gap in an instant. Allies call out from behind, but Yuto raises his hand calmly, signaling them to stay back as the attack approaches. His eyes sharpen while he tracks the incoming strike, measuring the timing and angle with careful focus. At the final moment, Yuto releases a sweeping counterattack, meeting the charge directly and forcing Black Wolf to brace against the impact. Yuto's counterstrike collides directly with Black Wolf's charge, the impact lifting both from the ground. As force ripples outward, Black Wolf grins, unfazed. A violent shockwave bursts across the battlefield, tearing through stone and sending debris skyward. Nearby allies shield themselves from the blast. Yuto steadies his stance, breathing controlled, while fear flickers across the faces of those watching the clash unfold. Black Wolf's arm twists with dark power, spreading across his blade as he abandons restraint and commits fully to the fight. They rush each other again, weapons crashing midair, each strike sharper than before, as neither yields ground. Yuto and Black Wolf clash again, their blades striking with force as dust rises around them. Observers track every movement, aware the duel is escalating. Among the watching students, Tension spreads as they question Black Wolf's true strength and recall how easily he defeated Onizuka before. Even his own followers admit his power is overwhelming, acknowledging that his brutality is the reason they continue to stand behind him. Black Wolf twists his weapon mid-swing, pressing the attack with lethal intent, forcing Yuto into a narrow defensive exchange. Realization spreads through the group as the truth surfaces. Black Wolf was responsible for Onizuka's death. While others hesitate, a blonde youth watches with a tense smile, sensing that the battle's outcome will demand action from him soon. Across the field, Yuto kneels briefly, exhausted yet laughing under his breath, as Black Wolf approaches with renewed excitement. Black Wolf charges again, shouting Yuto's name, but Yuto thrusts out his hand and activates absorption, drawing in the incoming force. Energy surges violently between them, shocking Yuto as the power resists control and tears through the ground. When the light fades, Black Wolf stands injured yet smiling, proving his strength still endures, despite the damage. Across the barren field, Yuto confronts Black Wolf after their clash, demanding to know his true intention. The distance between them feels tense, but controlled. Without hostility, Black Wolf lifts his hand and signals surrender, abruptly halting the battle's momentum. His calm expression unsettles everyone watching. Unexpectedly, he claims his actions were merely part of an assigned role. Suspicion lingers as Yuto studies him carefully. Standing face to face, neither lowers their guard while the explanation hangs heavily in the air. Doubt spreads among the observers. Finally, Black Wolf reveals that Yuto's power does not suffer decay like other heroes, marking him as an abnormal existence. Black Wolf steps close and apologizes casually, insisting the conflict was never personal. Yuto listens without lowering his guard. Turning away, Black Wolf explains that he was assigned to place a curse on Yuto as part of his work. The battlefield grows quiet. He describes the curse as a berserk state triggered by intense emotion, trading reason for overwhelming strength beyond normal limits. According to him, the power continues until the opponent is destroyed, or the user collapses. Yuto realizes absorption allowed him to obtain it. Caution fills his thoughts as he considers the risk, understanding such uncontrolled force could endanger allies nearby. Black Wolf explains that the entire confrontation was arranged, noting that Yuto's power has become harder to control than before. Fatigue begins to show on his face. Behind him, surviving followers gather, some injured, as he admits the berserk effect cost many of his own men their lives. Yuto exhales slowly and questions whether the Empire ordered this scheme. The crowd listens closely, waiting for confirmation. Black Wolf avoids a direct reply, deflecting the accusation while tension spreads among both factions. Suddenly, a student rushes forward, insisting immediate action is necessary, threatening to reignite the fragile ceasefire. Yuto turns as a student releases a swirling sphere of power toward Black Wolf, determined to test the truth of his explanation. The blonde youth reacts with excitement, claiming that such provocation should trigger the berserk state if the story is accurate. Instead, the attack disperses across the ground while Yuto intervenes, reminding them that the skill activates only under serious coercion. Black Wolf mocks the attempt, arguing that their limited strength cannot force the transformation they expect. Understanding spreads among the group as they realize Berserk repeats relentless assaults until a chosen target is eliminated. A blonde youth declares his desire for a hero who can truly wield magic, while Black Wolf stands before him and refuses to let Berserk activate in this place. Crouching beside him, Black Wolf warns that if such a person remains aligned with the Empire, the future will grow unstable and dangerous. With a mocking smile, he grips the youth's head, threatening to crush his defiance and silence that insolent gaze. Before harm is done, a voice intervenes, halting the aggression and forcing Black Wolf to step back. From a distance, Yuto questions the intention behind these actions as the blonde youth finally claims to understand. Several students accuse the Empire of deceiving them with false promises of nobility, claiming the title was only bait to secure their cooperation. The blonde youth steps forward angrily, demanding answers, while Black Wolf casually redirects the focus toward Yuto's decision. Closing the distance, Black Wolf questions whether Yuto truly desires noble status. Yuto refuses firmly, rejecting the offer without hesitation. Gesturing toward the gathered forces, Black Wolf points out that Yuto has already gained numerous skills, and that open hostility is unnecessary. Turning away as if to depart, he suggests the matter could have ended peacefully, leaving uncertainty hanging across the battlefield. A massive surge of dark energy erupts above the fortress, tearing open the sky and drawing the soldiers' attention upward. The commander stares at the swirling distortion forming overhead. Civilians recoil in confusion as the vortex expands, its shadow stretching across the walls and shaking the surrounding cliffs. Guards brace themselves, unsure of the source. From the battlefield below, Yuto and the others witness the descending mass of power, realizing the situation has escalated beyond their confrontation. Unease spreads quickly. Black Wolf smirks faintly, while Melia steps forward, implying that someone powerful has been provoked by their actions. A massive dark dome descends between towering cliffs while summoned students gather at a distance. Yuto stands apart, watching the structure pulse with unstable energy. Melia studies the phenomenon with concern as Black Wolf observes calmly beside her. The ground beneath the dome cracks open, forming a vast hollow space. Yuto advances carefully while others hesitate, tension spreading across the battlefield. Black Wolf steps forward and prepares his blade, signaling readiness for conflict. Melia remains composed. Suddenly, black pillars erupt violently from the earth. Yuto unleashes his power, tearing through the ground as shock and confusion spread among them. Black tendrils lash across the battlefield, striking soldiers without warning. Yuto stands at the center as chaos spreads. Black Wolf advances through the turmoil, evading the rising spikes with sharp movements. A swift clash erupts when Black Wolf swings his blade downward. Yuto braces and withstands the impact, though the force drives him back across the fractured ground. Seeing the destruction escalate, Black Wolf signals for a halt. The surrounding fighters retreat slightly, wary of the uncontrolled power tearing the field apart. Melia steps forward with steady resolve as a dark pillar looms overhead. She prepares to intervene, determined to prevent further devastation between them. As the battlefield quiets, Black Wolf steadies himself and lowers his sword. Across the shattered ground, Yuto watches in silence, measuring the shift in tension. Melia advances and proposes terms to avoid further losses. She stresses that the Empire cannot risk Black Wolf or the summoned heroes here. Without relaxing his guard, Yuto considers the offer carefully. Dark pillars remain suspended nearby, ready to descend if talks fail. Captured allies are revealed as leverage, proving the stakes of refusal. Black Wolf stays alert, sensing fragile balance. Yuto states his condition, asserting control over any exchange. Melia questions whether captured lives truly serve as bargaining tools. Yuto responds by challenging her resolve, implying strength decides ownership, not hesitation. Black Wolf raises his sword and explains that true ability lies in mastery. He emphasizes that understanding how to use power defines real skill. A towering strike crashes into the battlefield, splitting the ground and forcing everyone to brace. The display proves his claim without further argument. Observers activate a perception ability, carefully analyzing movements and predicting outcomes. Through calculated focus, they assess strength beyond surface appearances. Yuto admits he has nothing more to offer verbally. Still, he asserts that skill, refined correctly, can evolve without limit. Melia accepts the terms with a calm smile, acknowledging Yuto's position. Black Wolf listens carefully, understanding the shift in authority across the ruined ground. Dark tendrils surge again, but Melia walks forward without fear. Behind her, restrained fighters struggle while the battlefield remains under Yuto's control. Black Wolf tightens his grip, sensing provocation in her composure. Meanwhile, Yuto watches closely, aware that pride may disrupt fragile negotiations. Frustration rises as Black Wolf reacts, yet Melia dismisses his anger coldly. She makes clear that weakness holds no value in her judgment. With detached confidence, Melia evaluates Yuto's ruthless nature. Black Wolf realizes her words carry deeper intent than simple mockery. Melia calmly challenges the meaning of true skill, while Black Wolf prepares another strike. She explains that real ability is unique and cannot be replicated through simple training. The surrounding fighters listen, sensing a deeper intent behind her reasoning. Power surges violently as Melia demonstrates restored strength. Energy splits the ground, forcing Black Wolf to witness the scale she commands. Yuto observes closely, while Melia urges him to absorb Black Wolf's power. Control over the battlefield begins shifting toward her design, revealing her guidance. Melia admits she restrained Yuto's growth before. Now she allows his absorption to advance freely. Melia permits Yuto to claim whichever abilities he wants from the restrained heroes. Unease spreads among them as the choice rests solely with him. A witch cautions that some powers bring hidden risks. Her warning contrasts with Melia's detached approval of any outcome. Black Wolf advances, prepared to test Yuto directly. Careful observation passes between them as tension tightens. Without hesitation, Yuto attacks and absorbs Black Wolf's strength. The clash ends decisively. Silence follows as Yuto assesses the new power, quietly grasping its nature. Yuto studies the scattered heroes and recognizes their individual powers as visible light. Understanding dawns as he prepares to test his absorption further. A sweeping strike surges across the field, knocking fighters down and exposing their vulnerability. Fear spreads while Yuto advances without hesitation. Activating absorption, he draws their released energy into himself. The impact shakes the battlefield as multiple abilities merge under his control. Silence follows the collapse, with survivors staring in disbelief. Yuto stands alone at the center, strengthened by gathered power. Two remaining heroes face him. Then reluctantly yield. Permission is granted for him to take what remains. Yuto reassures the remaining heroes, admitting he cannot fully master their abilities yet. Melia watches calmly, satisfied that his growth proceeds according to her design. Negotiations resume as Black Wolf presses for the promised information. Standing firm, Yuto prepares to dictate the next terms. Beneath the dark barrier covering the sky, Yuto stands alone and demands the promised information. His voice carries across the empty battlefield as tension gathers again. Melia explains that the curse binding them remains unresolved and dangerous. Nearby, fallen fighters struggle to recover while Black Wolf watches cautiously. Black Wolf approaches with measured steps, recognizing Yuto's growing influence. From a distance, Yuto studies both leaders without lowering his guard. Suspicion spreads as motives are questioned and loyalty becomes uncertain. The fragile alliance shows signs of breaking. Yuto warns that killing the minister could end everything. Confrontation threatens to reignite. Melia proposes that if they are allowed to return, the Empire will not attack. Yuto considers the offer while Black Wolf watches for any hidden intent. Yuto reminds them of their earlier promise and questions the minister's authority. Doubt surfaces over whether restraint was ever genuine. Black Wolf admits that Valencia alone lacks the strength to oppose Yuto. The balance of power becomes increasingly unstable. Dark energy gathers around Black Wolf as he prepares to act. The fragile negotiation begins to collapse. Melia suggests eliminating Yuto would resolve everything. Black Wolf responds with uneasy awareness. Amid rising tension, Yuto reveals that the Empire is divided by conflicting motives. His survival, he claims, prevents certain factions from moving without restraint. With measured clarity, he removes the minister, the hero, and Black Wolf from suspicion. Unease spreads as hidden actors become the true focus. Lowering his certainty, Black Wolf admits he never fully understood the earlier actions taken. Confidence gives way to reluctant reflection. After considering the admission, Yuto accepts it as valuable intelligence. The atmosphere shifts from hostility to guarded restraint. Though unsure of its accuracy, he concludes the information is sufficient and allows them to withdraw. A witch steps forward and requests permission to speak about the unfolding situation. Yuto and the others turn their attention toward her proposal. Confidently, she claims her eyes can detect falsehoods without error. The group listens carefully as she offers her ability as verification, with calm assurance. She explains that truth and deception appear clearly to her. Melia acknowledges the usefulness of such perception. Smiling faintly, the witch suggests leaving the final judgment to Yuto. Consideration passes between them as the decision lingers. Suddenly, an unfamiliar presence manifests behind Black Wolf. The revelation unsettles the fragile balance once more. The witch agrees to proceed and fixes her gaze on the minister. Her sharp expression suggests she has noticed something others overlooked. From a distance, she remarks that the minister now has someone to fear. Yuto steps forward and shifts the discussion from suggestion to firm request. With deliberate confidence, she asks to accompany them back to their territory. The group pauses, uncertain of her intention. Black Wolf reacts immediately, alarmed by her sudden proposal. Confusion spreads as tension resurfaces. Calmly, she offers an alternative, proposing a hero be surrendered as a hostage. The negotiation takes a darker turn. The witch casually remarks that a hostage may not be essential, yet preferable to having none. She leans closer to Yuto, testing his reaction with playful confidence. Suddenly, one of the restrained girls steps forward and volunteers to go as well. Her voice breaks the tense silence across the field. Encouraged by emotion, another girl declares the same intention. Black Wolf and the others stare in disbelief at their resolve. A companion urgently questions Minachi's decision while fear spreads among the remaining heroes. The situation grows unstable once more. Black Wolf shouts in anger, refusing to allow them to leave. His restraint finally collapses. Black Wolf protests loudly, but the witch silences him, insisting Minachi be allowed to speak. Attention shifts as the others restrain their reactions. With a steady smile, the witch pressures Minachi to choose for herself. Yuto watches quietly, leaving the decision entirely in her hands. Across the empty ground, Minachi declares that she will remain. The opposing side observes without interfering. Though she once wished to leave, she admits circumstances have changed. Her resolve unsettles both allies and enemies. Stepping forward with determination, Minachi promises to prove her worth from this moment onward. The witch acknowledges Minachi's resolve and pushes her to speak clearly. Under pressure, Minachi struggles but forces herself to step forward before everyone. Encouraged by the moment, she argues that growth requires risk and opportunity. The surrounding group listens, uncertain yet unable to dismiss her reasoning. Melia concludes that the exchange has been fair, counting information, skills, and two heroes. The negotiation settles into uneasy balance. Yuto stands with Melia before the massive stone wall in a barren valley. The group gathers cautiously as a tense exchange appears to conclude. One student remains kneeling apart, unsettled and silent. Nearby, a short-haired girl collapses from exhaustion. Melia observes without concern while Yuto studies the situation carefully, assessing strength and weakness around him. Chaos breaks out as summoned students attempt to flee. Armored knights move swiftly across the field, forcing everyone back into formation. Additional soldiers arrive and surround the scattered youths. Resistance fades under strict control. Later, Yuto looks toward distant peaks, resolve deepening quietly within him. Several summoned students are escorted from a grand building, while Minister Roy oversees preparations near mounted horses. Authority tightens around the group as officials reorganize their forces. Roy studies Yuto and his companions from a distance, questioning their abilities. Uncertainty grows when he admits he cannot gather information about Yuto through his usual means. Despite his rank, Roy finds himself unable to assess Yuto properly. Suspicion lingers as Yuto stands calmly, revealing nothing. Melia suddenly approaches Yuto closely, startling him with her bold familiarity. Her presence disrupts the tense atmosphere. Akane rushes forward angrily while Yuto reacts in confusion. The confrontation shifts attention away from the minister's scrutiny. A blond young man glares intensely, anger barely contained. Nearby, Melia watches with a faint, knowing smile as tension thickens between the summoned students. Melia reminds them of the bargain that spared their lives. In the distance, Yuto stands apart, listening without reacting while others remain scattered across the field. Frustration overwhelms the blonde student as he confronts Yuto directly. Yuto remains composed, offering no resistance while enduring the hostility. The enraged youth raises his hand but is stopped before striking. Fear and pride clash visibly as control slips from him. Falling to the ground, he shouts, threats at Yuto. Yuto turns away calmly, leaving the bitterness unresolved behind him. Yuto stands behind the two winged girls, while a furious blonde student trembles nearby. The girls watch Yuto, waiting for his judgment. One suggests killing the threat, yet Yuto calmly refuses. The defeated student remains on the ground, rage replacing earlier confidence. Afterward, the summoned group is escorted toward the fortress under strict supervision. Guards maintain order as tension lingers in silence. Before parting, Yuto advises the girls to come to him if danger arises. Melia observes the exchange with quiet interest. The gates shut behind them. Gratitude shows briefly on the girls' faces while Yuto walks ahead, composed and distant. Melia questions Yuto about his connection to the two winged girls. He answers vaguely, avoiding details, while maintaining a calm expression. She presses further, hinting that the girls seem dangerous. Yuto responds that he will explain later, refusing to reveal everything now. From above, the fortress appears heavily guarded, surrounded by steep cliffs and stationed soldiers. Yuto stands apart, watching the stronghold carefully. A short-haired girl admits she misjudged Yuto's strength. He listens quietly without reacting to her regret. Melia remarks that even sharp eyes cannot see everything. Yuto glances back, aware that hidden truths still remain between them. Before the fortress gates, Yuto explains he had considered many factors to secure his place there. Melia listens skeptically while the others remain silent. She questions whether he was truly thinking at that moment. Yuto answers that his plans began long before leaving the imperial capital. Melia reflects on the chosen hero and the others. Doubt lingers in her eyes as she studies Yuto carefully. An elf woman admits she cannot yet place her faith in them. Unease spreads among the group. Overcome with guilt, the elf bows deeply in apology while Yuto stands composed, accepting her honesty without visible resentment. The elf woman lowers her head, confessing she acted without confirming the truth. She accepts responsibility, declaring she will not complain about any consequences that follow. Yuto responds calmly, stating he will still help her, even if trust cannot be given immediately. His steady tone eases some of the tension. Melia smiles faintly and welcomes the elf, despite lingering doubts. She notes that mixed feelings are natural in uncertain times. A young blonde woman speaks proudly about the country her father built, reminding everyone of its ideals and strength. Yuto advises that acceptance cannot be forced. The group stands quietly, considering his words as understanding slowly begins to form. The elf woman expresses gratitude and agrees that cooperation is necessary from now on. The group stands in the open valley. Melia steps forward with renewed purpose, declaring it is time to speak openly. Yuto listens closely, while she reveals she had investigated matters carefully before coming there. The fortress stands silent against the cliffs as the group advances toward a hidden structure. A sudden disturbance near the entrance signals danger within. Inside the thieves' base, the party discovers signs of harsh living conditions. Unease spreads as they walk through the sloped passage. At the cavern's end, strange creatures gather in the darkness. The two winged girls stare ahead, sensing movement among the monsters. A presence shifts above them, forcing the group to halt. Yuto steps forward while the others brace themselves. Without warning, force erupts across the cavern floor. Debris scatters as the team withstands the impact together. Dark spikes erupt from the ground as Yuto shields Melia and the others. Shock spreads across the cavern while debris falls around them. A blonde princess appears seated upon a black throne, observing the scene with calm authority. The group faces her cautiously, recognizing her control over the space. Numerous identical black thrones suddenly manifest across the cavern floor. Confusion rises as the strange seats surround the party in formation. Melia and the princess exchange measured looks while Yuto relaxes slightly. The princess proposes discussing the minister's mention of separate forces. Yuto admits he had suspected something similar but lacked proof. Seated upon black thrones, Yuto and Melia discuss Valet and his position as Minister of Foreign Affairs. Suspicion arises that hidden knowledge surrounds the Empire's movements. Across the cavern, identical thrones face one another in tense alignment. Yuto admits uncertainty about how much another minister truly understands. Melia casually introduces herself by name, shifting the atmosphere slightly. Yuto reacts with mild surprise while the others observe carefully. The group realizes that the minister who once visited them was actually an elf in disguise. Yuto concludes there is no value in concealing information further. Calm returns as the discussion continues openly among them. Seated upon separate black thrones, Yuto listens as the princess questions his true purpose for coming there. Suspicion lingers that he carries an objective beyond simple cooperation. Melia recalls the prime minister's attendant, while Yuto answers vaguely, unwilling to reveal clear details about his thoughts. Discussion shifts to Daria and the possibility that she belongs to another force. Doubt grows as identities and allegiances are reconsidered. Yuto admits he could not perceive anything unusual at the time. Even his abilities fail to uncover hidden truths. Unease settles over the thrones as they accept that unseen forces remain beyond their sight. Seated upon her throne, the princess explains that the prime minister's actions were not driven by affection but by calculated intent. Melia listens from across the cavern. Yuto questions whether that connection implies another hidden faction. The scattered thrones emphasize the growing divide between possible forces. Melia admits her conclusions are not based on her skill but on instinct and observation. Doubt remains among the group. She suggests the presence of a hostile force, possibly linked to the former hero. Yuto rises from his seat, tension sharpening. Outside the cavern, a convoy advances through the valley, signaling that new players are entering the conflict. A surge of power erupts across the valley as Valet appears, confronting the glowing figure ahead. Shock spreads among the watching forces as the clash begins. Reinforcements gather behind him while he questions the sudden presence before them. Uncertainty moves through the ranks as tension rises. Minister Roy steps forward cautiously, warning that even exceptional enemies must not be underestimated. The atmosphere grows heavier with his words. Valet calmly asks whether anything has been uncovered. Roy lowers his gaze, unable to provide answers. Across the empty plain, the reply comes quietly. Nothing has been discovered, leaving the threat unresolved. Valet declares he had been conducting research in an underground imperial facility before his death. Minister Roy listens in shock as the claim reframes recent events. Roy closes his eyes and prepares to demonstrate what occurred. Power gathers as Valet advances to illustrate the moment. Attention shifts to Dennis and Daria, suspected of knowing critical information. Their possible involvement deepens the mystery. Valet suggests Dennis likely incited the earlier incident. Soldiers behind him remain tense as accusations sharpen. Regret surfaces over missing details, and the strained history between former childhood friends hangs heavily in the air. A violent surge of power erupts as Valet unleashes a decisive strike. Observers recoil while the blast tears through the space before him, amid the chaos. He declares that the enemy's end has arrived. Soldiers gather behind the railing, watching the confrontation unfold. Energy continues to clash as the attack presses forward. The shockwave forces nearby figures to brace themselves. The opposing figure withstands the blow and counters, driving Valet back. Surprise flickers across the watching minister's face. Recovering quickly, Valet acknowledges the strength displayed. He resolves to settle matters properly before withdrawing. After the clash subsides, Valet admits the others will not fall as easily as he once did. The gathered soldiers remain tense around the damaged platform. Minister Roy lowers his head respectfully and bids Valet farewell. Troops and mounted guards stand in formation behind him. Roy states that exile leaves only one destination for the banished. He then questions Valet about his next course of action. A surge of dark energy spirals around Valet as he prepares to depart. The wind whips across the valley floor. With a steady smile, Valet declares he has opposed the Empire from the very beginning. Across a jagged wasteland, a guarded cart moves toward Imperial land while soldiers follow behind. Two men sit inside as tension surrounds their journey. Whispers spread that an elf has entered the Empire, raising suspicion among the escort. The blonde man remains composed despite the growing unease. Inside the cart, the blonde figure sits calmly while Black Wolf rests beside him. Their familiarity contrasts with the strict guard around them. Black Wolf drinks casually, showing no fear. His damaged eye and steady posture suggest dangerous confidence. As crowds trail behind, the blonde man accepts Black Wolf as a temporary ally. Black Wolf lounges inside the moving cart, questioning the meaning of friendship while watching the blonde man carefully. His relaxed posture hides sharp awareness. Doubt surfaces between them as the blonde man sweats slightly. Trust seems fragile, and their bond appears uncertain under the Empire's watch. The cart rolls forward across the wasteland, while soldiers trail behind. Black Wolf states their positions, clearly defining one as superior and the other subordinate. Leaning closer, Black Wolf suggests obedience would change everything. His tone carries calculation, testing the blonde man's resolve and authority. As the ride continues, tension softens slightly, yet the exchange reveals a relationship built on hierarchy rather than trust. Black Wolf exhales slowly, admitting he no longer wishes to be overwhelmed. The blonde man watches him closely, sensing hidden weight behind his calm expression. Silence lingers before the blonde man decides to speak plainly. He prepares himself, knowing the truth will shift their fragile balance. Black Wolf reveals that Prime Minister Dennis noticed his berserk ability and issued the order. The confession clarifies the Empire's involvement. Hearing the name, the blonde man reflects carefully, while the rocky landscape stretches ahead. The political connection deepens the situation. Standing within the cart, Black Wolf states he only fulfilled what he was commanded to do. The blonde man admits he ignored further instructions, maintaining a calm expression. Black Wolf watches him carefully, gauging his sincerity. As the cart moves beneath steep cliffs, the blonde man suggests cooperation might have helped. Black Wolf reacts with casual dismissal, easing the tension slightly. Both men share guarded smiles, acknowledging they are not enemies for now. Their temporary understanding forms without fully erasing doubt. Far away, the Imperial flag rises above a massive structure. Elsewhere, a captive quietly accepts his situation in silence. Inside a palace, cell discussion turns to Miyamoto, praised as the strongest hero currently within royal control. Inside, a dark cell, two captives beg, desperately, while a cloaked figure questions them about Onizuka's death. Fear dominates the narrow stone corridor. The prisoners promise to reveal everything they know, trembling as they plead for mercy. Their panic contrasts with the interrogator's cold detachment. Bound hands hang behind their backs as the shadowed figure dismisses their suffering. Pain is treated as insignificant within the silent chamber. Confusion arises when the cloaked presence remarks that stronger abilities were expected. Doubt surfaces regarding the true strength of the summoned heroes. Pressed further, the captives admit Miyamoto is the only powerful individual they know, offering his name in hopes of survival. The cloaked figure silences the captives abruptly. Both prisoners kneel helplessly, sensing the interrogation is far from over. From beyond the iron bars, the shadow declares further demands. The prisoners stiffen as the darkness presses closer. A single eye gleams within the hood as the figure proposes gathering more skills. Fear spreads instantly across their faces. The interrogator hints at a known method, recalling bodies scattered elsewhere. The implication reveals how abilities are being taken. Cornered by the question, the captives tremble in confusion while the shadow questions their hesitation to act. A blade flashes inside the cell, slicing into a prisoner's shoulder. Blood spills as the cloaked figure begins enforcing compliance without hesitation. The interrogator extends a weapon through the bars and calmly asks whether they prefer death. Both captives recoil against the cold stone floor. Overcome by terror, they shout their agreement and promise cooperation. Desperation replaces resistance as survival becomes their only concern. Forced into submission, the prisoners accept they have no alternative. The shadow watches from above, ensuring their resolve remains firm. Under pressure, they suggest targeting other classmates to obtain stronger abilities, abandoning loyalty in exchange for their lives. A wounded prisoner proposes using Menace's healing ability to offset future injuries, revealing willingness to sacrifice classmates for survival. Another captive grips the blade and accepts there is no alternative. Desperation seals their decision to proceed. Inside a dim war chamber, leaders gather around separate seats while a quiet declaration signals growing uncertainty about the current balance of power. Melia, the blonde woman, listens from her chair as another woman acknowledges unusual perception beyond a damaged eye. Attention shifts toward hidden capabilities. A tense silence follows as implications surface. Observers begin considering whether new factions are emerging within the conflict. Discussion turns to the possibility that the former hero Ray has established a third force, altering the strategic landscape. Despite the speculation, Melia calmly notes that no decisive evidence currently confirms this theory. Melia leans back in her seat, dismissing the idea that powerful figures would fall so easily. Doubt remains, yet she stays composed. Speculation grows that Salisford may have truly killed Hero Ray, while suspicion shifts toward the minister's involvement in Nakani's death. Suddenly, a man named Valet enters the chamber with dramatic movement, drawing attention from everyone present. Melia watches without alarm. With effortless flair, Valet summons birds and presents himself confidently before the assembly. His arrival disrupts the tense atmosphere, offering a polite bow. He apologizes for interrupting, shifting the focus of the discussion. Within the war chamber, a declaration states that Hero Ray remains alive. The seated leaders absorb the claim while the distant figure of Valet stands calmly at the center. Melia responds without surprise, indicating the council had already considered that possibility. Attention shifts toward what this survival truly implies. Valet questions the certainty behind their conclusion, suggesting the fallen did not perish without consequence. Doubt begins circulating among the assembled figures. From above, the chamber appears divided as scrutiny focuses on Melia's knowledge. Her confidence invites further examination. Unshaken, Melia maintains a faint smile while Valet quietly observes, recognizing her resolve. Valet suggests restarting the discussion step by step, noting that some of the young women appear unconvinced. The chamber quiets as attention returns to him. Standing before the gathered figures, he requests permission to speak first. Several observers remain cautious while others watch with interest. With a relaxed gesture, Valet begins explaining his interpretation of recent events. The group listens carefully, measuring his intent. Melia studies him closely, her expression steady yet unreadable. His confidence meets her calm scrutiny. As understanding spreads, it is proposed that Ray once possessed every skill now divided among them. Valet explains that most demons were eliminated by a single individual. He contrasts that figure with Yuto and the other heroes, stating Hero Ray once held every ability combined within himself. The group reflects on the idea of their powers united in one body. Realization spreads as they consider the scale of such strength. Clarification follows that those abilities were not original but taken from others. The comparison to forced acquisition raises unease. Valet notes the first skill granted resembled the one hero Nakatani possessed. Yuto listens carefully, sensing the connection. When the term absorption is mentioned, Yuto recognizes its meaning as usurpation. Valet explains that by relying on a single foundational ability, Ray accumulated an inexhaustible collection of other skills. Yuto listens while tension quietly builds among the gathered heroes, reflect fragments of Ray's original strength. The implication unsettles several members. Valet singles out Yuto, stating his ability alone was considered truly special. The remark draws sharp focus toward him. Discussion turns to Ray's harsh nature and the difficult circumstances surrounding past events. Unease spreads across the chamber. Melia closes her eyes and ends the topic, signaling the conversation has gone far enough. A young woman questions whether Ray's skill was the same method used to steal abilities through killing. Laughter follows, but unease remains among the group. Another member concludes that such a method is incomplete. The discussion shifts toward identifying a true counter to Ray's overwhelming strength. Valet calmly states that only Yuto's power can oppose Ray. He explains that incomplete usurpation cannot fully suppress other skills. Yuto considers the idea of facing an opponent who mastered every ability. Suspicion also rises about possible betrayal within the Empire. Melia quietly predicts inevitable hostility, leaving the chamber in tense silence. The group acknowledges that hostility will likely be mutual. Melia notes that circumstances affect both sides, not just their own faction. Attention turns to whether Hero Ray is sealed as well. The possibility raises urgency about releasing Melia's seal, if balance must be restored. Concern grows that Yuchen may become a target if others seek strength through killing. Yuto listens, recognizing the escalating danger. Suggestions emerge about uniting those cast out from the Empire and preparing countermeasures, Planning shifts toward both defense and offense. As silence settles, the group contemplates the broader consequences of open conflict. The group proposes building a stronghold, similar to the demon capital Arganium. Yuto agrees that Melia's seal should be released while he focuses on growing stronger. Valet decides the timing is appropriate and offers to entrust management to Melia. The atmosphere shifts from debate to action. Melia accepts calmly, noting it had always been part of the plan. Confidence replaces earlier tension. Attention turns as someone remarks that more individuals seem intent on settling there. Reports confirm several visitors approaching. A crowd emerges from the cavern entrance, prompting Melia to set aside personal matters and address the newcomers. Yuto turns toward the approaching crowd and decides to address the immediate problem before anything else. Emerging from the cavern walls, mountains rise around Demon City Arcanum as a winged figure sweeps down toward the outer paths. Several travelers move carefully along the rocky approach. Outside the walls, Yuto stands with his allies while others observe from afar. Trust in his experience settles the group before action begins. Inside the cavern that once served as a base, he studies the assembled crowd. Shadows stretch across unfamiliar faces. Thieves and non-humans, ignored by the Black Wolves, enter together. Their arrival thickens the atmosphere. As doubts spread about their numbers, Yuto stays composed and prioritizes his own side's stability. Yuto listens quietly as a companion speaks about the distant dream of coexistence between humans and demons. The idea lingers heavily in his thoughts. His name draws him back to the present. A brief pause follows as he lowers his gaze and regains focus. Standing before his group, he reassures them with a steady expression. Concern fades slightly among those watching him. A small girl clings to him, while others remain close at his side. He responds calmly, easing their worries. Later, he confirms the situation around the area is stable. Attention shifts toward Gray as their next move approaches. Children and townspeople watch from behind pillars as Yuto confirms the area's safety. Relief spreads quietly among the gathered residents. Nearby, his companions observe the crowd's reaction while maintaining vigilance. Subtle tension lingers despite the calm atmosphere. Soon after, attention shifts to two outsiders standing apart from the others. Their presence draws uncertain looks from both humans and demons. Stepping forward, Yuto announces that the pair will remain under his protection. Murmurs ripple through the square as old grievances resurface. Rather than denying the past, he urges restraint and mutual tolerance. Stability, he believes, will allow everyone to continue living without further conflict. Before the gathered residents, Yuto declares that the summoned heroes pose a danger to everyone. The crowd listens as uncertainty spreads through the square. Beside him, Melia lowers her gaze while he accepts responsibility for voicing the remaining doubts. Determination hardens his expression. With steady resolve, he states his intention to restore the city into a place where many races can coexist peacefully again. He points out that beastmen, dragonkin, and demons are already living together. Their unity stands as proof of possibility. Finally, he reveals that even an elf has joined them, deepening the crowd's shock. Yuto continues addressing the crowd, insisting that more allies will gather if they choose to move beyond past hatred. His steady gaze urges them to look ahead. Melia steps forward and asks the residents to accept her and her intentions. The people exchange uncertain looks but remain attentive. Others begin expressing their willingness to contribute and earn trust through effort. Even those once doubtful show signs of reconsideration. Supporters suggest proving their value through actions rather than promises. Agreement slowly spreads among the listeners. Finally, the witch proposes a bold demonstration, drawing everyone's focus toward her next move. Several children approach cautiously as the witch reveals a strange crystalline flower. Curiosity replaces fear while they study its shining petals. She explains that the object is a gift meant for them. The nearby adults watch carefully, unsure of her intention. From a distance, Yuto and the others observe the scene unfold. Uneasy murmurs rise among the onlookers as tension builds. Encouraging the child to hold it, the witch instructs her to channel a small portion of power into the flower. Hesitation lingers before she complies. Energy surges suddenly, causing the crystal to flare brightly. Shock spreads across the square as the display startles everyone nearby. The crystal flower releases a surge of ice, astonishing the crowd as a child displays unexpected magical talent. Even those aware of her limitations stare in disbelief. The witch kneels beside the children and explains the potential of the gift. Excitement replaces fear as they imagine new strength. Yuto watches calmly while the girl expresses her wish to contribute. Acceptance from him settles the matter without further dispute. Attention shifts toward future growth and the possibility of closing the gap between them and distant heroes. Hope begins to spread. A determined warrior steps forward, demanding to be acknowledged. First, her challenge redirects the gathering's focus once more. A determined warrior steps forward and demands recognition, drawing attention from the children nearby. Her boldness shifts the mood into restless excitement. Soon, more children gather around, expressing their desire to learn magic as well. Yuto reacts sharply, trying to maintain order. Meanwhile, Gray arrives carrying large sacks of supplies, surprising the group. Questions arise about who arranged the delivery. Beastmen inspect the goods and detect traces of both human and elf presence. Suspicion briefly passes through the gathering. Yuto recalls Valet and realizes promised support has quietly arrived. Even presumed enemies continue honoring their word. Yuto smiles faintly as he looks over the town square, where residents and allies stand together in uneasy harmony. The rebuilding effort has begun. From a higher vantage point, the vast land surrounding the city stretches toward distant mountains. Activity is expected to increase as more races gather. Elsewhere, within a castle corridor, a young figure kneels before dark liquid pooling across the floor. Guards rush toward the disturbance. Beneath the surface of the black water, an arm sinks slowly as blood drifts outward. The hidden threat quietly advances. Inside a silent corridor, a shadowed figure pressures a captive to follow a predetermined method below. Several youths stand trapped on a tiled floor as tension tightens. Blades are drawn when the threat escalates, forcing a brutal choice upon the kneeling target. Fear spreads as steel glints near exposed skin. Suddenly, an attacker drops from above, attempting to strike decisively. The intended victim reacts instantly, refusing to accept death. Combat erupts across the chamber as weapons clash at close range. One fighter intercepts the assault, while another counters from the flank. After the exchange, pain lingers as dark energy forms within a wounded hand. The struggle leaves lasting consequences. Inside the hall, a wounded man laughs wildly while gripping his sword, blood pooling beneath him. Opponents keep their distance, wary of his unstable resolve. Despite losing an arm, he continues smiling through the pain. Shock spreads among the onlookers as they struggle to understand his endurance. He mocks their hesitation and questions their fear, standing defiantly over the severed limb. His reckless stance unsettles even the seasoned fighters. As concern rises, he declares that survival depends on recovering a certain skill. The situation becomes a desperate gamble. Lowering his head, he admits they are considered worthless, certain no healer will save them. Despair quietly settles in. Driven by desperation, the wounded man insists that killing the girl and stealing her ability is their only path to survival. Fear twists his reasoning. Regret overwhelms him as he realizes they relied too heavily on another leader. Frustration erupts into anger at his own weakness. He confesses that hesitation in the past cost them their advantage. Violence now seems like the only solution left. Facing certain death, he chooses to act on his own terms rather than wait helplessly. His resolve hardens despite the risk. Others echo the grim choice before them, torn between slaughter and imprisonment. The room fills with despair. Facing their opponents, one captive argues that the others are not accustomed to killing. Doubt flickers among the defenders as tension thickens. A young woman lowers her head while a wounded man shouts in frustration. His voice attempts to shake their resolve. Despite his injury, he insists they still hold a chance to prevail. Desperation drives him to cling to that belief. Suddenly, he lunges forward across the floor, declaring the need to save themselves. The reckless charge forces immediate reaction. At the last moment, a girl lifts her gaze, silent and steady. The clash hangs on her next move. As the wounded man charges forward, the blindfolded girl raises her hand and releases healing magic. Light floods the hall, halting his advance mid-stride. The glow surrounds his injured body, restoring torn flesh and stopping the bleeding. Shock replaces fury as strength returns to his limbs. He collapses before her, overwhelmed, while others stare at the unexpected act. Confusion spreads among both allies and enemies. Calmly, she declares that her power will mend anyone in need. Her decision silences the room. When questioned, she stands firm, implying the reason should already be clear. After witnessing the healing, the group reflects on Yuto's influence and the girl's faith in him. His presence shapes their decisions more than they expected. One of the former captives questions that trust, frustrated by how much power Yuto now holds. Strength, in his eyes, allows freedom without consequence. Others counter that, if Yuto had intended harm, he could have acted long ago. That certainty steadies their doubts. The girl admits she relied on that belief, despite uncertainty about the Empire's future actions. Her choice came from conviction. Across the hall, scattered figures remember they were summoned as heroes, each granted power unlike their former lives. The group debates the meaning of their powers, suggesting that such strength must exist for a necessary purpose. Doubt lingers among those who once misused it. Accusations rise as some question whether former classmates have already taken lives. Tension sharpens when the idea of killing each other surfaces. A young woman confronts them with the memory of abandoning Nakatani. Her words force everyone to face shared responsibility. Silence follows her challenge as guilt settles across the hall. No one can easily deny their part in what happened. The hall grows quiet as scattered groups stand apart, each processing the confrontation that nearly turned fatal. Distance remains between former classmates. Minnie steadies herself despite lingering fear, while others watch her with mixed guilt and relief. The weight of her decision is evident. A composed girl approaches and gently reassures her, urging her not to shoulder the burden alone. Support begins to replace suspicion. She then addresses everyone, acknowledging the uncertainty ahead and the harsh truth that several of them face death. Reality settles heavily across the room. With calm resolve, she states her wish to prevent further loss, guiding the group toward restraint. After the argument subsides, a composed woman admits that keeping the two men nearby could create further risk. The kneeling prisoners remain tense before her. She then states that, for now, returning quietly to confinement would be the most helpful choice. Her tone leaves little room for resistance. The wounded pair begin to protest, fearing what imprisonment might mean. Panic flickers across their faces. Calmly, she clarifies that this prison is not a place of execution. Confusion replaces dread. She reminds them that other criminals were taken elsewhere, assuring them their fate will differ. Under watchful eyes from the upper floor, the wounded prisoners are escorted through the corridor. Guards maintain control as onlookers observe in silence. A calm explanation follows, stating that this world demands harsh decisions. The pair are told to return to their cell temporarily. Suddenly, one prisoner violently attacks his companion, driving a blade forward without warning. Shock spreads as blood stains the floor. Those nearby react too late, startled by the desperate outburst. The hall erupts into confusion. The injured man pleads frantically, terrified of being sent back. Fear now governs his actions. The surviving prisoner kneels and begs weakly, asking for an end rather than a return to confinement. Minnie freezes, shaken by the desperation before her. Aya's sudden strike lands nearby, drawing alarmed cries from the others. The atmosphere tightens as fear spreads again. Moments later, both wounded men collapse onto the floor, blood pooling beneath them. Their resistance ends without further struggle. Silence follows as the remaining students stare at the bodies, confronted by the consequences of their failure to unite. The last conscious man murmurs regret before losing strength, while the others stand motionless in shock. As the wounded man makes his final move, a blade pierces through him from behind. His apology reaches Minnie just before his strength fails. Blood splashes across her face, and she stares in disbelief at the body, collapsing before her. The sudden violence leaves her shaken. A scream echoes through the vast hall, while students look on in horror. Grief and shock spread among the gathered group later. Outside the castle, daily life resumes as residents repair damaged buildings. The city continues rebuilding despite the tragedy. From a distance, observers note that progress is steady. Work advances, even as the memory of loss lingers quietly. As reconstruction progresses, the townspeople acknowledge that Yuto carried much of the burden in restoring their refuge. Gratitude quietly follows him through the streets. Beyond the buildings, companions gather in an open area while children watch eagerly. The witch steps forward, preparing another display. With a sudden surge of force, energy bursts outward and shakes the ground. Onlookers shield themselves from the shockwave. Excited voices rise in admiration of the power shown. The witch, however, evaluates the technique with a critical eye. She concludes that the method is flawed, noting the user's physical limits prevent proper control in the open field. The witch proposes searching for dragon survivors while Yuto listens thoughtfully. The idea draws curious looks from the others nearby. Confident in her own methods, she asks if anyone knows where a dragon might be found. Determination shapes her next move. Far from the city, jagged mountains and cavernous ruins stretch across a desolate landscape. The unknown awaits among those silent peaks. Within that wasteland, a fierce woman stands amid scattered weapons and bodies, wondering who will challenge her next. A massive stone formation shaped like a skull towered over the canyon, marking the entrance to a hidden cavern deep within the mountains. Inside, Yuto and his companions advanced carefully through the dark passage, while bats scattered above and tension filled the silent space. As they walked, discussion about distorted history and controlled knowledge revealed how different nations shaped truth to maintain authority and order. Moving deeper, The group reflected on how information in their respective worlds spread unevenly. Eventually, they reached a wider chamber where Yuto observed the unfamiliar surroundings, recognizing that this world differed greatly from the human society he once knew. The witch carefully organized fragments of information gathered from everyone's thoughts and concluded that a dragon had once slept within this cavern by coincidence. Standing before a vast hollow chamber, the group realized they had reached the exact place connected to the dragon's final presence. Further explanation revealed that surviving young dragons were left behind after the last battle, where their kind faced destruction. Yuto listened as the origin of dragonkin was clarified, explaining that superior dragons once learned to assume human forms. It was ultimately understood that although they shared the same tribe, many individuals had permanently lost the ability to return to their dragon state. The dragonkin woman lowered her head and admitted that if she had mastered transformation earlier, the journey would have been shorter and less exhausting. Before anyone could decide their next move, Yuto sensed a strange, sweet scent drifting through the cavern and immediately grew alert. Across the wide chamber, multiple figures emerged from the shadows above, silently surrounding the group from higher ground. Without warning, several bodies were thrown down before them, and a composed woman stepped forward, amused by the unexpected visitors. Recognition spread among the party as the mysterious woman addressed them confidently, drawing attention to the number of intruders now standing in her domain. A woman descended lightly onto the massive remains within the cavern, greeting the dragonkin princess with unsettling familiarity and calm amusement. Tension sharpened instantly as weapons were raised, and Yuto noticed the recognition in Melia's expression upon seeing the newcomer. The woman introduced herself as Crucia, once feared as a war goddess, who had fought brutally against the Empire centuries ago. With composed curiosity, she examined the dragonkin and spoke as though comparing monsters from different eras and battlefields. In a sudden flash, blades shot forward toward Melia, forcing Yuto to react immediately as the attack closed in without warning. Crucia lunged forward with overwhelming speed, her blade cutting through the air as Yuto barely twisted his body away from a fatal strike. Realization struck him mid-battle, and he activated absorption, drawing in the force of her attack as energy surged violently around his body. Instead of retreating, Crucia closed the distance and pressed herself against him, studying his reaction with unsettling fascination. Observing from behind, her subordinate hesitated, sensing the imbalance of power and recognizing that the situation was turning dangerous. When questioned about her purpose, Crucia calmly revealed that she had come for a single reason, her gaze fixed firmly on Yuto. Crucia stood within the darkness and revealed that she had remained there for a long time, waiting for a powerful being to awaken. When asked how long she had waited, she showed no concern for time, treating the passing years as something insignificant, turning back toward Yuto and the others. She dismissed the question and shifted her focus entirely onto the gathered group. With open anticipation, she declared that an appealing feast had conveniently arrived before her without effort. As she stepped forward to claim them, the witch calmly suggested that patience would improve the meal, attempting to delay the imminent clash. The witch attempted to distract Crucia by drawing attention to her interest in unusual eyes, carefully steering the tension away from immediate violence. Crucia accepted the suggestion with playful agreement, momentarily easing the pressure while the others quietly regained their composure. However, she suddenly pointed out the dragon concealed in the darkness behind them, revealing that she had been fully aware of it all along. Amused by the idea of refinement, she compared raw prey to properly prepared food, treating the group as nothing more than ingredients. Stepping forward with deliberate confidence, Crucia declared that their arrival alone was reason enough for what she intended to do next. Melia sensed a sudden shift in the cavern as Crucia leapt upward, triggering a violent reaction from the shadows above. Massive dragons burst into view, descending rapidly while debris scattered, and the party struggled to maintain their footing. Amid the chaos, Melia recognized one of the approaching dragons and stared in disbelief at the familiar presence. As the creature landed and transformed, its human form emerged, leaving the group stunned by the unexpected reunion.